Good evening. Before we get started, I'd like to invite Reverend Robert Wood at St. Aidan's Episcopal Church in Alpharetta to lead us in invocation.
Thank you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, in your word, you have given us a vision of that holy city to which the nations of the world we brought to their redemption through your Son, Jesus Christ. Behold and visit, we pray, this city of Milton and all the cities of the earth. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Help our leaders and our citizens to make wise and caring decisions for the common good. Enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and with justice, and that men and women who here live from all the corners of the earth, from different cultures and with many talents, may find with one another the fulfillment of their life together under your most gracious rule. Through your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Reverend. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, April 25th, 2011 to order. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the April 25th, 2011 regular meeting. However, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Additionally, those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment, either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards were received by the city clerk prior to the meeting of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. When you hear the bell, you have 30 seconds to complete your remarks. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided, however, that such an individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Julie Zonner Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria is out of town on business today. Councilmember Alan Tart.
Here.
Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody here to our City Council meeting in Milton. And if our clerk could please call the first item.
First item is approval of meeting agenda. This is agenda item number 11075.
Okay, do we have any other items to be considered, either by council or staff? Nope. Good. Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the meeting agenda item number 11075 as prepared by staff.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, got a motion by Councilmember Loss, second by Councilmember Hewitt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, the next item is public comment. Not that anyone's here for public comment, but public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember that this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. You will have 5 minutes for remarks. I know we've got some public comment.
Yes, sir. We have 5 individuals that like to make a public comment, and I also have one I'll read into the record at the end of those comments. Our first comment comes from Kelly Broley.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Brawley, and I live at 335 Lake Bend Court, Milton, Georgia, 30004. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm a resident of the city of Milton and a mother of 3 children, and I'm here tonight because I'm concerned that the city of Milton may not be protecting our interest as citizens in the transportation plan that we have for the city, and specifically that and the Crab Apple area in particular. As you know, the City of Milton has a comprehensive transportation plan, which, among other documents, I have read recently, and that plan uses a north to south corridor system. It states on page 5 in particular that the primary concern to achieving the city's goal is to encourage commuter traffic to use specific corridors and draw commuters away from the rural roadways of Milton. These corridors include north to south roads of Birmingham Highway, Freemanville Road, and others. And the reason for this plan is really rooted in safety. On page 15 of the transportation plan, Kimberly Horn Associates did an analysis and pointed out that these rural roads are narrow, they have no shoulder, no guardrails, reduced sight distance. They're particularly dangerous for student drivers, and as you know, there's some blind driveways on those roads as well. And my concern here as a citizen is that with the recent map that's been submitted by the Fulton County School System that uses a west to east pattern for traffic transportation, that's in diametric opposition to the north-south plan for traffic that the City of Milton has spent a great deal of time and money establishing. I also want to point out the Lou Oliver plan for Crabapple and the traffic analysis that was done in that area. There was a traffic analysis done that in particular looked at that Crabapple intersection and that eastbound queue of cars on Crabapple Road as you approach what used to be Eddie West on your right. At the peak hour, that eastbound traffic had on average 44 cars in the queue in the morning. And my concern as a citizen is that if the Fulton County School System is permitted to pass this new redistricting plan with an east-west orientation that compromises safety in the northern areas and then brings a lot of traffic up through the Crabapple intersection, that it's just going to be too much for this city to bear. And I don't think that any of us would look forward to eminent domain proceedings, in front of the old blind dog, or changing that whole plan and what is set up. The other point I'd like to make about what you have done such a good job in establishing is a walking, commuter-friendly area that it was, in part, one of the reasons that led to the Safe Routes to School grant of $500,000 that was done in conjunction with the local elementaries. That Safe Routes to School grant was done on the basis that we have a pedestrian-friendly, low-traffic area around the area of Crabapple Elementary School, Northwestern Middle School, and then Summit Hill Elementary. And in an effort to protect those grants that we have and will get in the future, I'm here to respectfully request that as a group, as the City of Milton and as our council, that you would represent our interests and take a position with the Fulton County School System, not to necessarily draw their boundaries, but to protect our interest in the transportation plan that we have currently. I know that over the past there has been some differences among the council, that everyone has not had a lot of agreement on everything, but I would just like to encourage you that this is not over, that there is still time for you to have a united voice and pass a resolution that you might set forward to the Fulton County School System and make it clear and with strength that the plans that you have for this city are important to protect. And as a citizen, I thank you for all that you do for us. I thank you for your time commitment, and appreciate all your efforts, and again, would just enlist your help in this important matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Andrew Furman.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Furman. I live at 1010 Fieldstone Trail in Milton. I'm president of the Fieldstone Farms Homeowners Association. I am here representing my homeowners association. To reiterate the previous speaker, our position is that we are really hoping that the Council of Milton can work with the Board of Education. I know that, as I like to say, the horse is out of the barn. They're working on their plan. The city has done a great deal of effort to try to make the traffic flow a certain way. Things may be totally thrown out the window now with what potentially could happen with the school system and the redistricting of the schools. As I understand it, the Board of Education is somewhat sovereign in their decisions, but if the city could make a firm and committed stand on trying to work cohesively with both the Board of Education and a plan that's already been put forth, I think would be a great help to the future plans of Milton as far as the traffic flow. Personally, from where I live, which is near White Columns, one of the criteria for the Board of Education at their meetings were, hey, go out and drive it. From my house to the new school system, to the new Bethany Road site, 18 to 20 minutes with no additional traffic. From where I lived in Milton High School, 6 or 7 minutes. Now, that's only my particular section of where I live, which is the Freemanville Road Northwest corridor. Again, I'm really here just to briefly state that I think it would be worthwhile for the board to make a resolution and to present it to the Board of Education to see if there's some way in which everybody can kind of work together and come to a decision that would be beneficial to the future growth of Milton and the future traffic flow of Milton. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Pam Kipnis.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Pam Kipnis. I live at 115 White Columns Drive, Milton, Georgia, 3004. I have 4 children in the Fulton County system, and I'm here to talk about the redistricting that's going on with our Board of Education. In speaking with numerous people in the Freemanville-Birmingham corridor, we are opposed to the current plan presented in round 3 of the community meetings. Milton High School is closer in proximity to my house than the Bethany site. In addition to being closer to Milton High School, I travel a north-south traffic pattern to Milton as opposed to the west-east pattern of the Bethany site. My most direct route to the new school is to take Red Road. This is a west-east traffic pattern. I'm not one of those moms who feels it is inconvenient to sit in traffic and get to Starbucks or whatever. My motivation is to get kids to school on time and safe, whether they be in the car or on the bus. Red Road, Providence Road, and Birmingham Road are all traffic nightmares during the rush hours, not to mention the traffic backup on Bethany Bend with Kings Ridge School, K through 12, on the same street. Red Road is backed up a half a mile during rush hour. Adding the addition of more cars and buses will fill the road to overcapacity, creating gridlock and accidents. Filling roads to overcapacity will not allow people to go where they need to go in a timely manner. In addition, the accidents that can happen on these west-east roads is alarming. I hope I am never the mom who gets a phone call to say that my student has been in a serious accident. In every conversation I've had with my neighbors, they have all mentioned the danger this west-east plan creates for young drivers as well as experienced drivers. In reviewing the City of Milton's transportation plan, the crash locations for 2006 to 2008, which is up on the website, the number of crashes in this particular area on the west-east patterns range from 10 to 100 crashes during that time period. And these are the roads that would be taken to the Bethany School site. If the City of Milton forces the Board of Education to shift back to Plan A or B for an already north-south traffic pattern, then no additional traffic will need to be added to the commuter traffic, which uses our west-east bound roads, for example, Red, Providence, and Birmingham Road. They cut over to Hopewell to get to Windward to get to Georgia 400. Highway 9 is the infrastructure that best supports traffic coming from Alpharetta to Milton. Our roads are not designed nor built, nor can handle the increased traffic at this time without major improvements, for example, shoulders, widening, and traffic lights. Plus, this is not the vision of the City of Milton. I ask you as a mayor and a council, to take a stand and meet with the Fulton County Planning Department and the Board of Education and show them all the work and plans you have so diligently done for the city of Milton. I recommend keeping with the north-south traffic patterns as recommended by the engineers in the city of Milton Master Transportation Plan while keeping our students at Milton High School. I would like to submit two petitions that have been going around our city. One has 644 signatures, one has 474 signatures to it. And in addition, I respectfully request the mayor and council to pass a resolution asking the Board of Education for an alternative plan that is considerate of Milton's north-south traffic pattern. Thank you so much for your time. And I'd like to submit that.
Our next public comment comes from Rob Picalis.
Good evening. Mayor, City Council, thank you for your time and service to our community. My name is Robert Picalis, and I live at 315 Creek Point, Milton, Georgia, since 2004. And as a father and a husband, as a father of four and a husband, and a person who served his country, I understand the true commitment it takes for your time, and I thank you very much. Now, normally I would come here with a full prepared statement. I honestly do not, for a multitude of reasons. Because last time I read my last statement to the Board of Education, no one listened. And I'm imploring you to listen tonight. Not to me, but to a lot smarter people in this room. Ms. Brawley's a lot smarter than me, and most people in this room are a lot smarter than me. And I ask you just to listen to one comment. You're doing it for the best interests of your kids and for your community. For some particular reason, the Fulton County has decided to rip Milton apart. I understand there needs to be a new high school, and no one is disagreeing that there needs to be a new high school and where it's built. But for some reason, the cities of Roswell and the cities of Milton have to take the brunt of that blow. We're not asking for any change to it except for one. We're asking that the city board, that the Fulton Board of Education keep the west pattern, the north to south, and the west of Freemanville staying in Milton, just for a simple traffic pattern. And that's the best telling sign that that is correct comes from Ingrid Huff, who's the Executive Director of Operational Planning, and who on video and on camera at round 2 districting meetings, and this is one part that I will read. She said the lots of comments in regards to traffic traveling north and south in North Fulton. No one wants to travel east and west. So we heard back in the first round and we tried to bring out some options in that regard, as well as our transportation, as we worked very hard on that to work on that east and west travel. It's very clear that this is a pertinent issue for this board, and I implore this council to take some action. No action is no action. We implore you to take some action. There's only two things I'll fight the very hardest for. One is my family, and one is the Marine standing next to me in combat. Anytime, any place, anywhere. And I ask that this city council do the same for its voting public. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Miss Lisa Colley.
My name is Lisa Colley. I live at 14680 Freemanville Road, Milton, Georgia. And I'm also coming before you today to speak about the redistricting. The last map presented in the third round of the redistricting process, Plan C, will have an impact to our city in many areas. How many city council meetings, work sessions, planning commission meetings, CPAC meetings since 2006 have discussed our comprehensive land use plan, our comprehensive traffic plan, and recently the Lou Oliver City Center and plans for City Hall? How much taxpayer money has been spent on all that time? Needless to say, several years and many long hours have been spent. And what about our city survey? How much money and time was spent sending out the survey, collecting and analyzing the data, and determining what the Milton community wants? The Board of Education's jurisdiction is over the building of schools and finding appropriate land. Does this mean their jurisdiction controls all the city's plans? Through this redistricting, they are indeed controlling and determining the outcome regardless of what our plans encompass. I have posed the question before, at what point does the city's jurisdiction come into play? And the answer I'm getting is it doesn't. Is it fair or right for another form of government to reach that far into the control of an entire city? Maybe they should have been invited to our planning meetings or had someone from the BOE sit as our planning commission chair. Should we have stopped planning altogether when the school was announced, not sent out the survey and put everything on hold until the BOE was done redistricting? If we had done so, then the plans for Milton's future would not have to be adjusted, rearranged, and even derailed. I'm from Florida, and this kind of reminds me of a hurricane. You know the hurricane is coming. It's been advertised on the news channels, and it's announced it is coming. Yet no one prepared for it or even took it into consideration while going about the day-to-day planning for the future. It was looming out there in the Gulf, gaining power and strength, and now it is here wrecking all the hard work you have put into our city. I know this is not in your control, but it should be. Our city should have the right to exercise our jurisdiction in regard to the traffic and other plans. The building of one high school should not dictate the future direction and outcome of our city. If the Board of Education actually agreed with all the information the city had suggested and given to them on how Plan A or Plan B were more consistent with our traffic plan, and had they examined and met with our traffic engineers, then would they have come to the conclusion of Plan C for Milton? Does the Lou Oliver City Center take into consideration the additional traffic plan Plan C brings from Roswell into Crabapple? The Board of Education should make time to meet with our engineers, since this redistricting will have the largest impact on the future of our entire city, more than any commercial group or entity could ever do, all without any of our control or say-so. I respectfully also request the mayor and council to pass a resolution asking the Fulton County Board of Education for an alternative plan that is considerate of the Milton Traffic Plan. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Brian Maloney.
Brian Maloney, 14430 Wood Road. I know you guys have a long night ahead of you. My goal tonight is really to try to maybe give you a little talking point or something. We know that City Council is against Plan C. We've all seen Mayor's YouTube clip and stuff like that, and nice job. Hollywood will probably be calling soon.
Can I excuse me, Brian, for breaking down? I just want to make sure everyone knows that, you know, City Council is not taking a stand and is opposed to
Well, sorry
C.
about that.
And, so just want to clarify that.
Well, sorry about that. Hollywood will still probably be calling that, hopefully. But so obviously the school board came up with Plan A, B, and C, and for some reason they went with C. The question I would pose to them is, what are the east-west roads that they anticipate the students using who live west of Freemanville? If they mention any of the gravel roads, that just seems totally illogical at this day and age. You look at Wood Road, a road that dates back to almost the Civil War, which has great historical significance to the city, is currently being used as the Milton Trail. And then you have Nix Road. So that seems to I can't imagine a school board saying that kids can travel on that. And I guess maybe it's because I live at the corner of Wood and Phillips, and over the past 4 years, we've had 5 teenagers plow through our fence and field. So, you know, there's a very serious safety factor there. So the other thing is, it seems like the school board, they have their own little kingdom, and I wonder if the council does come together and feel that some action is necessary of even approaching the state legislators and trying to force some action at that level. But thank you very much.
Thank you. we have any more public comment?
Yeah, Mayor, we have one more that was submitted in letter format. I just want to be very clear up front that this is from members of CPAC, but that this letter to be read into the record is not submitted as the view of CPAC, and that they're not speaking expressly because of their attendance or participation on CPAC, but that they are just members of CPAC that want you to hear their comments.
Okay, now
Makes sense.
just,
Ken will allow this letter to be read so
Okay.
long as that is on the record before it's read.
okay, I just wanted to clarify to make sure that, should this be taken as coming from individuals that have signed this letter, or?
Yes,
Okay.
this is not the position of CPAC. It is
Okay.
individual citizens that happen to be members of
So, just for the record, this comment is from these individuals. It's not from a city-sanctioned committee or from the committee itself. Alan, you have a?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you, Mayor. I assume, therefore, that we will read into the record who those people are and what their names and addresses are,
I do have one.
just like anyone else, their addresses.
Yes. Is that the appropriate thing if we have it?
Then would it even be appropriate for it to be read into the record if they can't give their addresses?
I would be fine with them doing that as long as we get that into the record or get that into the file later. That'd be fine.
I'm assuming if they're on CPAC, obviously
You
you
have that
can match.
information, yes.
If you read their names in the record, that you can match the addresses.
It's on file.
We do have one more comment from a citizen, Bob Helfrich, that just came in. Mr. Helfrich, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I'll be real brief. I'm a proponent of the north-south model for redistricting. I live at 520
Okay.
Affirmed Lane. That's the Triple Crown subdivision. Bob Helfrich is my name. I have a junior at Milton and a second grader at Birmingham Falls Elementary. I attended the Board of Education meeting in Dunwoody on Thursday. That certainly is a different venue than here tonight. But I want to share with you just quickly to add to some of the previous comments, my two comments to the Board of Education. First was a process comment. As the decision maker, I asked the board to consider whether the process so far had been thorough. We've had a few public community outreach type meetings, but primarily what we've seen is raw data, the feeder schematics, and a map, and a list that's who's out, who's in. But we really haven't seen anything that's underneath that would reveal how the staff, and again I was speaking to the board, how the board staff had analyzed the criteria for this decision that the board itself had established in 2001. You may have seen yourselves that there are some primary and there are secondary criteria. But we really have not seen any kind of the connective tissue of this decision. It's more or less, here it is, but we just want to know why, so it feels less like hide the peanut. The second comment, a little bit more specific, when I looked first at the map, the most recent map, which we have before us, did a little compass circle and said, gee, all of the communities, all of the neighborhoods within a 2-mile radius of Milton High School are included in the Milton, are retained status quo in the Milton attendance zone, except for a couple. The question was, gee, the primary criterion, number one, is geographic proximity. So I'm saying, let me look at this situation. The wife now makes a left turn. It's a straight shot, less than 2 miles to go to Milton High School versus get on the road, make a left turn, 6 intersections later, all congested during the rush hour. Why would it be a fair application of the proximity criterion to have this result? So if you ask that question and say, are there any other flaws? Well, you really can't tell that because we haven't seen the evaluation yet. So those are the two comments I'd like to share. Thank you very much for your time. Good evening.
And now I'll read that email. Email came in at 4:57 p.m. to Mayor and Council regarding Board of Education school redistricting. The undersigned members of Milton's Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee Oppose Plan C of the redistricting plan proposed by the Fulton County Board of Education. After spending the past 3 years in careful consideration of the land use plans as part of Milton's comprehensive plan, we believe Plan C is in conflict with several of the basic goals of the comprehensive plan. We also believe Plan C is in conflict with the tenets of the Milton Transportation Plan and the Lou Oliver Crabapple Master Plan. Plan C calls for the majority of the students that would attend the new high school on Bethany Bend to travel on east-west traffic pattern. The primary feeder roads to this new high school are Birmingham Road, Red Road, Bethany Bend, and Providence. Each of these roads is already at or over capacity. The new student, family, and bus traffic on these roads will destroy the fragile balance of cross-city commuter traffic from Cherokee County and the current Milton resident commuter traffic that already put these roads at capacity. The BOE Plan C also calls for a majority of the future students at Milton High School to come from the current Roswell district. The primary feeder roads for the Roswell students traveling to Milton will be Crabapple Road through the Crabapple intersection and Bethany Road to Mayfield Road. These roads are at or over the capacity of the current infrastructure. The Crabapple Master Plan recently proposed by Lou Oliver calls for traffic calming measures for the already burdensome traffic volume and patterns. The traffic volume that would result from the significant student population coming through these crossroads as a part of Plan C will destroy any possibility for the new Crabapple Plan being a success. We respectfully request the Mayor and City Council formally oppose Plan C and ask the Board of Education to develop a redistricting plan that takes the traffic components of Plan A and B into consideration while considering the future plans of Milton. Please pass a resolution that formally advises the Board of Education that the Mayor and City Council of Milton oppose Plan C and call for the creation of a new redistricting plan. This email is signed by George Ragsdale, Paul Moore, Curtis Mills, Tom Inlow, Kim Horn, Jennifer Fletcher, Marty Locke, Fred Edwards, and also Lynn Gregory called in at 5:54 p.m.
Thank
And
you.
just to confirm that it's not the view of CPAC as the entity, just those individuals.
Okay. Is there any other public comment?
That's all, sir.
Okay, we'll close public comment, and I appreciate everyone's comments. I'd like to make one comment, and I guess I don't need to fill out a card, just sitting up here and I'm the mayor. Myself and when Mr. Maloney made his comments, I just want to clarify, I had at one meeting, at the previous meeting, I had made some comments of what I felt, both as a citizen and the mayor, what I felt my concerns were. And while I can still stand behind those, I want to make sure it's very clear that that's not, the city hasn't taken a position, nor the city council. Those were my concerns I expressed. And also want to make sure that we've had a lot of meetings with our staff and whatnot, and let everybody know that the city is on board with however the Board of Education decides the plans. We'll do our best to work to make that plan work and do what we think is the best for our citizens and the children that go to school. So thank you for all your comments. Let's see. Will the city clerk please call the next item?
Our next item is consent agenda. First item is approval of the March 21st, 2011 regular council meeting, agenda item number 11076. Next, we have approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Stuart Cooper Newell Architects, PA, to provide site planning for the proposed public safety facility on Highway 9 in the amount of $5,000. Agenda item number 11-077. Next, we have approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Breedlove Land Planning, Inc. to provide conceptual engineering plans for the proposed public safety facility on Highway 9 in the amount of $5,500. This is agenda item number 11-078. Our fourth item is approval of a change order for engineering services agreement between the City of Milton, Georgia, and A&R Engineering for intersection improvements at Cogburn Road and Bethany Bend in the amount of $4,225. Agenda item number 11-079. Next, approval of engineering services agreement between the City of Milton, Georgia, and Universal Engineering Sciences, Inc. for a Phase 1 environmental site assessment for the 15690 Hopewell Road property in the amount of $1,500. Agenda item number 11080. Our next item is approval of a contract in the amount not to exceed $510,170 for a citywide road patching and repair contract with Blunt Construction Company, Inc. This is agenda item number 11081. Our seventh item is approval of a contract between the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, Inc., CALEA, and the City of Milton. This is agenda item number 11082. Our eighth and final consent agenda item is approval of a contract between the Atlanta Regional Commission and the City of Milton to commence a Livable Centers Initiative Study Project. This is agenda item number 11083.
Okay, do I have a motion and a second on the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hewitt, second by Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. That's neat.
That was cool. Yeah, I did that.
Sudie, do you mind reading the rules again?
Oh, my battery is low.
Fine.
Yeah.
I do that.
All right. So moving on to reports and presentations. The city clerk, please call the first item.
Our first presentation is presentation of the City of Milton fiscal year 2010 annual audit. This is presented by Adam M. Fraley, CPA, Malden and Jenkins.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Adam Fraley with Malden and Jenkins, the city's internal auditing firm. And I understand in your packets this evening, you should have the City of Milton's comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended September 30th, 2010, and also our firm's annual audit agenda for the same year in there. I'm pretty much going to focus on the annual audit agenda, which kind of encompasses and summarizes the audit and the results from that. And I'm going to kind of hit the high points in there. So certainly, if you have any question or anything you want me to go a little further into, stop me and we'll address that. In the audit agenda, on page 1 there, it talks a little bit about why we're here this evening. Talk about the overview of what we got here. I'll let you know what our audit opinion was, a little bit of financial information, some of the required communications that we have with the governing body as yourself, some of the accounting recommendations we had, and of course answer any questions. I was the engagement partner on the engagement. We also had a lady, Emily Sobchak, who was the engagement manager, who was out here during the conduct of final field work. On page 2, talks a little bit about the audit opinion there. These financial statements are the responsibility of the city. The city's finance department puts together a good-looking set of financials here, and we're charged with the responsibility to come in and audit those financial statements, perform our auditing test work to ensure that they are fairly presented in all material respects. In doing that, we also are charged with the responsibility of issuing an opinion. We did issue our opinion, and it's considered a unqualified opinion, which is also commonly called a clean opinion. In other words, we agree that these financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects for the year ended September 30th, 2010. On page 3, this is just some of the highlights of some of the financial results for the year ended September 30, 2010. The city, at the citywide level, its net assets or equity position increased from about $49 million at September 30, 2009 to about a little over $52 million for the year ended September 30, 2010. In that number, that equity number, of course, there's a large number of assets, infrastructure, et cetera, that makes up that equity position. The city's net assets, it's important to note that about 36.5 roughly of those assets, or net assets, is from investments in capital assets, net of any related debt. What that leaves
leaves about 15.6 million in unrestricted net assets. That's the amount of net assets and equity that's essentially considered available for operations. At the bottom of page 3, and it goes through page 4 and page 5, these are, I always call them a Cliff Notes version of the footnotes. In the comprehensive annual financial report, you've got footnotes in there that kind of help explain some of the numbers and some of the things, statements going on within those financials. This here is just a Cliff Notes version to kind of help you look at this and understand what that footnote is trying to tell you. And so I'd encourage you to kind of glance at these as you're looking through the financial report. On page 6, one real important thing I added to the agenda this year that I wanted to point out is the City of Milton does a real good job preparing a good look and comprehensive annual financial report. Not only do we believe it's fairly presented with respect to the numbers and amounts, and it is good looking, the City of Milton also participates in the highest level of award that is available to a local government. Each year, the City of Milton sends its CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, off to the Government Finance Officers Association. This is an association for the whole United States and Canada, and like I said, is the highest level of reporting that you can do for a local government. And they've been awarded each year the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. I thought it was important to put that in this year. A CAFR, one thing a CAFR adds to it is not just the financial statements, it adds certain statistical information, which is in the back of that report, certain introductory information that really adds to the financial report. Has a lot of good information and also, successfully got the award. The city's gotten the award for the past years, and of course this year the city has also sent their comprehensive annual financial report off to hopefully get that award again, and I think we plan to get that. So I thought it was real important, and I just pat on the back for your finance department in doing a good job there. At the bottom of page 6, and it goes for several pages, this is our required communications, things that I'm required to communicate to the governing bodies, the councils, commissions, et cetera. I'm not, excuse me, I'm not going to go in detail of each one of these. Some of the things highlight, if we had any disagreements with management or if we had any unresolved issues or what have you. I'm glad to say we didn't have any. Management was completely cooperative, got us everything we needed, and it really helped in the process and helped it go smoothly. So we're always very appreciative of that. We did have some audit adjustments. Those were delivered to management. They've been made in these financial statements to make sure that they reflect the proper financial statement amounts. Had no disagreements, as I said. And that takes us over to page 10, if you want to turn with me. We did have some findings. Nothing outside of audit adjustments. These findings related to and are required to be reported under the standards, but were audit adjustments. These are things that were not identified through the city's closing process, that were identified during the audit, but we worked with management to make sure that these items were properly reflected in the financial statements that you have with you there. We had 3 such items. As I said, these items were adjusted in the financials and are now correct. We also had a few what we consider management points. These are management recommendations, things that just kind of we notice as an outside independent party coming in and looking at the finances or maybe internal controls here or there that we thought were worthy to mention to management to better their processes going forward. And that's through page 11 there. On page 12, we're going into some of what we consider other matters. These are new accounting standards, new auditing standards that are coming out that we always want to kind of keep everyone kind of ahead of the curve on. Some of them will have very little impact or none on the city unless they get into these certain types of transactions. Some will have a fairly large impact on the city. One item I do want to note in that section, it's on page 13, and it's item D. We did note this last year, but it's getting closer. This is a standard. It's statement number 54, having to do with fund balance reporting. And it's something that's coming up next year. The city's financial statements for the year ended September 30th, 2011. A lot of folks look at fund balance. You look at general fund, you look at your fund balance to see, what your equity is there. It's going to look different. Now we have certain things like reserved and unreserved. And if you'll see under item D there, you'll see items A through E in the middle of the page. Those are the new definitions. And so just to educate everyone a little bit, we've put that in here, and on the following, starting at the bottom of that page and the following page, it's kind of a definition of each one of those categories. So I'd encourage you to kind of get familiar with those categories. Those will be the new categories of fund balance as you're looking at it and looking at the health of the city and looking at spendable resources versus non-spendable, restricted versus unrestricted. These are the new definitions that will impact the city next year. And the new standards, they go through for several pages there. That one I just wanted to mention. And last but not least, I always want to mention just the free continuing education we offer. So, if y'all, it's been a real big success. We've been doing it for about 2 years now. We do it on a quarterly basis. We do it at all different cities. In fact, I just taught at one at the Fulton County BOE site right around the corner here down in Alpharetta just a week ago on this GASB 54 topic. So we do relevant topics, something that's real good for our clients, whether it be the management or even sometimes elected officials. But if y'all know of anyone that can benefit from those, certainly talk to Stacy and we can get them on the list and get them in there. So, any questions?
Do you have any questions from council? Okay. City?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I want to also give a recognition to our great staff and Stacy and your department, and Chris. So thank you very much for your hard work. And
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, will the city clerk please say on the next item?
Next item is May is Older Americans Month proclamation, presented by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay, is Mary Rummel here? Okay, good. I want to welcome Miss Mary Rummel, coordinator of the North Fulton Golden Games, who also serves as program coordinator for the City of Roswell Adult Recreation Center. Also, we have Miss Cindy Bonacci, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Milton. North Fulton Golden Games kickoff will be on Wednesday, May 4th at 9 a.m. with opening ceremonies at the Roswell Adult Recreation Center. Events will continue throughout May, concluding on May 26th with the awards luncheon. And now, if Mary would step forward, I want to read this proclamation. And I think I could say for the record, Chris, didn't you and I win the horseshoes?
We did.
So,
Yes.
City of Milton, equestrian horseshoes. It against Roswell.
More than Councilmember Price.
Yeah. So, all right. Whereas the older Americans of the City of Milton are a vital part of our nation's demographic makeup, and whereas older citizens are members of our community entitled to dignified, independent lives, free from fears and misconceptions about aging, and whereas each community in America must strive to recognize the contributions of our older citizens, understand and address their evolving needs, and support their caregivers. And whereas our society is dependent upon intergenerational cooperation and support and benefits from our collective efforts to serve older Americans and the people who love them. And whereas this year marks the 45th anniversary of the passage of Older Americans Act by the United States Congress. And whereas Parks and Recreation activities enhance the physical health and mental well-being of older adults. And whereas participation in recreational programs improves strength and flexibility, provides opportunities for older adults to learn new skills and meet new friends. And whereas the City of Milton is supporting and encouraging citizen participation in the 17th Annual North Fulton Golden Games to be held during the month of May at various locations throughout North Fulton County. Now therefore, I, the Mayor, and the City Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, hereby dedicate and proclaim May 2011 as Older Americans Month in the City of Milton, and encourage all older citizens to become involved in the Milton community and remain physically active throughout their lifetime. And this is given under my hand and seal in the City of Milton, Georgia, on the 25th day of April 2011. So.
We need to send word back to Ross with the challenge is on.
Put the heat on.
So, yeah, take that back to Mayor. Tell him,
You want to update them on the mayor's challenge for this year?
I'm going to let you hold this for the picture.
Football through.
Excuse me, ma'am. Will you step right in there? I'll be on the end. No. I am. Do these pants make my butt look big? That's one of those questions you just don't ask. Because I'm not.
all right, y'all, here we go. I'm not going to do three. I'm just going to say everybody's looking good. It's going to go. And awesome.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. Has anybody here ever seen the commercial where they show Abe Lincoln and Mary Hey, Paul. Okay. Thanks for that proclamation. All right, we got a regular type guy here now.
No, they said we just got a regular tie down.
All right. There's no items under our first presentation, so we'll move on to our public hearing. Will the city clerk please sound the item?
Approval of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to Cosmo Foods, LLC, doing business as Paradise Biryani Point, located at 5310 Windward Parkway, Suite D, Milton, Georgia, 3004. The applicant is Pavan Bandai for consumption on premises, wine and malt beverages. Agenda item number 11084. Ms. Stacy Inglis.
This applicant has met all the requirements of the City of Milton to obtain their alcohol beverage license. They're actually going in the old Red Hen location, so where you know where that is, the point of reference. So staff recommends approval.
Okay, do you have any questions for Stacy? All right. Is there any public comment on this?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the hearing. Do I have any discussion from council? And if not, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 11-084.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I had a motion by Councilmember Tart, and I want to say it sounded to me like I have a second by Councilmember Thurman. So, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Stacy. Is the applicant here? Okay. We wish them well in their business. All right, we'll move on to the zoning agenda. Will the city clerk please read the zoning rules and sound the next item?
At the second regularly scheduled meeting of the month, the mayor and city council consider a zoning agenda. These items include rezoning petitions, modifications of zoning, use permits, and associated concurrent variances, in addition to ordinances, resolution, and text amendments. Petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks, provided time remains with the allotted time. The city clerk staff will be keeping track of the time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards were received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. The Planning Commission heard the rezoning agenda items and recommendations have been forwarded to the mayor and city council for consideration and disposition. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the council during the meeting unless requested to do so. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the council in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Department of Community Development to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the council. When an opponent of a rezoning action has made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of this will constitute a relevant state statute and constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Our first zoning item is RZ 11-02, requested by Ashton Atlanta Residential LLC, located at State Route 9, South Side, just west of Sunfish Bend, to rezone from C1 Community Business to TR Townhouse Residential to develop 43 single-family lots on 8.26 acres for an overall density of 5.21 units per acre. This is agenda item number 11-067. First presentation was heard at the April 11th, 2011 regular council meeting. This is being presented by Ms. Lynn Tully, Community Development Director.
Good evening, Council. The subject site does include 8.26 acres. It is undeveloped, and they are asking for TR for single-family detached housing. They're looking at 43 units. The site plan does indicate that it is in compliance with the development standards. In fact, I would note that the development located on Highway 9 is not required to follow the Highway 9 overlay district standards, but they have provided a 20-foot landscape strip on the site plan. That is something that they're not required to do because of single-family detached at this point. Other considerations for the site plan include fencing, which is our typical requirement of four-board black equestrian fencing, screening to the rear of the homes by landscaping, color stamped pattern on sidewalks every 50 feet, and landscaping around the detention pond as well. They have submitted an environmental site analysis which report is sufficient and satisfies our requirements. This site plan has been reviewed by the arborist, by the city fire marshal, by the Public Works Department, and the school board. They did hold a public involvement meeting and submitted a public participation report as required. The Design Review Board held a courtesy review on March the 1st, 2011, and did have a few comments on the structures themselves, as well as the screening fencing, which would not be the fencing that's on Highway 9, but the fencing that would be behind the project. And let me go through the standards of review with you, please. Number one, whether or not the proposal will permit a use that is suitable in the view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby property. It is staff's opinion that the proposed use is suitable with adjacent and nearby developments and zonings. Number two, whether or not the proposal will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property. Again, it is staff's opinion that the proposal will not adversely affect any existing uses or the usability of adjacent properties as described above. In fact, there is provision of a street extension for future connection to the west, which provides a benefit to the adjacent property. Number three, whether the property to be affected by the proposal has a reasonable economic use as currently zoned. As mentioned, the subject site is currently zoned C1 and does allow for a 62,000 square foot retail, commercial, or office building. This would be a reasonable use as currently zoned. Number 4, whether the proposal would result in a use which will or could cause excessive or burdensome use of existing streets, transportation facilities, utilities, or schools. Staff does not anticipate a significant impact on these services as if the development is completed as proposed. Again, the applicant has provided or has included transportation improvements shown on the site plan, and those will expect to be provided in order to maintain that same opinion. Number 5, whether the proposal is in conformity with the policies and intent of the land use plan. Our current future land use plan does indicate office as the appropriate use for this site. The partial plan update indicates commercial for this future site, and therefore the proposed TR development does not conform to the land use plan map for office. Again, we have not adopted the current draft, but I wanted to mention that it is different than what's being asked for. So. Number 6, whether there are existing or changed conditions affecting the use and development of the property which give supporting grounds for either approval or disapproval of the proposal. Although the proposed development is consistent with the adjacent nearby zonings and developments, it is inconsistent with the future land use plan and the currently recommended comprehensive plan as well. Number 7, whether the zoning proposal will permit a use which can be considered environmentally adverse to the natural resources, environment, and citizens of the City of Milton, and the proposed use is not expected to be environmentally adverse. In conclusion, staff has recommended a denial of RZ 11-02. We have provided conditions if the proposal is to be approved. The Planning Commission heard this proposal on March the 22nd, 2011, and did have some comments concluding with an approval, which was a split approval, 5-2, at that meeting. Their comments included the possibility of relocating the proposed entrance further to the west to provide interparcel access with the Wyndham subdivision to the east. They also included the location of the recompense trees as well as locating the existing specimen trees on the site, and those things have been discussed. The vacancy rate of townhomes, where the applicant did indicate that townhomes currently are not a good market, economic market, and therefore that's why they are proposing the single-family detached product. And finally, whether the property has been considered for an office use. The applicant then stated that basically this property has been on the market for quite some time. There has been no commercial use put forward for the property, and therefore they felt like a change was necessary to be viable. Are there any questions regarding this particular item?
Any questions for Lynn on this? Have we seen, has this property come before us on something else in the past?
The original commercial zoning was, let me see when that was. RZ 03140, so it was in 2003.
Okay.
So that wouldn't have been before you.
Anybody have any questions?
I have one.
Alan?
Thanks, Mayor. The recommended conditions, should the council decide to approve this application, I don't want to be presumptive and assume we're going to approve agenda item 11-070, which has to do with the amendments to Chapter 16, Article 7. However, has the recommended conditions, do they include those upgrades to the Highway 9 that we talked about? I know that you said that doesn't need to necessarily come up with, but does it?
Well, because of the fact we did not expect at the time we wrote these conditions, did not expect any of the new Highway 9 standards to apply to single-family detached. I don't think that we have reviewed it. In fact, I know we haven't reviewed it specifically with that in mind. The only thing that was really included that we didn't that would be normally in the Highway 9 overlay district that isn't required is that landscape strip, and that was offered by the applicant. So.
Bill?
Yes. On the recommended conditions, Article 3C, provide a total of 4 parking spaces per lot. On what basis? What's that based on, particularly when we're talking about a 5,000 square foot lot and a 2,500 square foot residence?
Well, we include 2 spaces inside the garage. So there are 2 there, and then 2 basically in the driveway fronting the garage. If it's a 2-car garage, you've got 20-foot depth so that you can park 1 vehicle and then adjoining another 9-foot width, additional 9-foot width, which would be 2 vehicles. So you've got a pad basically in front of your garage that allows you to park. And that was the intent.
Seems like a lot for a residence of that size.
It may be.
I guess by default, though, if you have a driveway there in front of your 2-car garage, it's going to give you that.
So there's no on-street parking allowed then?
Not as
From what I've read.
proposed.
Okay. Karen, Julie?
I'll have some, but
Okay. You want to wait, Julie?
yes, sir.
All right. And just we'll open up to public comment with the applicant.
First, Mayor, I do have a letter that Ms. Mary Ann Cole would like me to read into the record. She was unable to.
Mm-hmm. For those in favor.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Pete Hendricks, practice law at 6085 Lake Forest Drive in Sandy Springs. Lynn has pretty well been through her review analysis on the application, 8.26 acre tract south side of Highway 9, currently zoned C1. We've got undeveloped to the west, TR at 7.87 units to the acre, developed contiguous to the east, TR at 8.14 units to the acre. The directly impacted portion of Crooked Creek directly across Highway 9, the CUP, that's at 3.6 units to the acre, and contiguous and to the south, Laurel Lake at an R4A, and that's at 2 units to the acre. Respective minimum heated floor areas, contiguous east and west 1,800, to the north and to the south 2,400. As we have gone through the process, I would like to point out, I don't want to reiterate in its entirety what Lynn went through, but I think the important parts of it are the compliance under review standard number 1, compatibility with adjacent and nearby property. Any adverse effect on adjacent and nearby will not anticipated to have any uniquely burdensome results on transportation, facilities, streets, utilities, schools, etc. And when we get to conformity with the policy intent of the plan, as she articulated, the plan, for some reason, calls for office on the property. However, when you go, and so necessarily if she finds herself in the position of being bound by that as a technical recommendation. However, under paragraph 5, she does go on to state that as far as planned policies are concerned, that the application complies with 3 planned policies. Accommodate our diverse population by encouraging a compatible mixture of housing types, densities, and costs within the city. Encourage development of housing opportunities that enable residents to live close to their places of employment, and support new land uses that enhance housing options in our community while maintaining support for the existing developed lower density rural, agrarian, equestrian, and residential areas of the city. And in wrapping up with a conclusion stating that although the proposed development is consistent with adjacent and nearby developments in the area and appears to meet the required development standards, and then we get into the trigger that because of what's set forth on the plan, that the ultimate recommendation needs to be denial. As we have gone through this exercise, as Lynn has pointed out, we served up of our own initiative a suggestion that there be a 20-foot landscape strip along Highway 9, and that's the way it was presented, and it was in front of the Planning Commission. And as I say, as we have moved through and we've gotten some community input and we have gotten some market input, it appears that everyone is better served by moving from an anticipated original minimum heated floor area, roughly 2,200 square feet, upwards of 2,600 square feet, that we're better served by having that minimum heated floor area have a range of 2,600 square feet to 3,000 square feet. Gives a nice larger home and also gives an uptick as far as value is concerned. The net result of that is that we're covering more of the lot. And so we respectfully would request that under condition 3F, that you please give consideration to that 20-foot landscape strip being 15 feet. That will enable the purchasers of the homes to feel that they truly do have some level of backyard. But staff, we have chatted about that, and I know that they felt that because we all had it in front of Planning Commission at 20 feet, they were hesitant just out of the box to step up and say, I know that you've asked for 15, that's self-imposed, we can understand it, but Planning Commission acted on the 20, and so we feel we need to leave it at 20. We would respectfully request that you give consideration out of giving a more marketable lot to letting that be 15 and not 20. And then the last thing that we would look to, excuse me, that is item 3G. You take a look at item 3F. Lynn mentioned this. This came out of the public participation meeting that we had. The community thought and idea was that the four-board equestrian fence for this particular corridor might not be what is best served and compatible, and something more reflective of what's across the way at Crooked Creek might give a better look and feel. We are here committed to do a fence. That's not an issue. We have no problem with being conditioned to 3F as staff has put it forward. But I think out of accommodation to community comment that we had, we might all give thought to a fencing type that is more in keeping with what's in that corridor. And under 3F, you've got the four-board equestrian, or as the director may approve. So I throw that out for your discussion and consideration. Mike, if you want to give us a look and feel of the housing that you're anticipating building.
First of all, can everyone see that? Because I do have a support document that I can hand out.
I'd love to see a handout.
Cool.
I don't.
Not that I need it.
And so, for the record, my name is Mike
really do.
Busher.
We could all use a handout right now.
Sorry. For the record, my name is Mike Busher. My residence is 3251 Compass Way in Milton, Georgia, 3004, and I am an employee of Ashton Woods Home. I'm here tonight to talk about the project. I don't know if I had enough supporting document for everyone to share, but I did want to give you a sense of the renderings. But as Pete covered, sure. So quickly, there are 6 floor plans that we anticipate here, with about 3 to 4 elevations apiece, approximately 2,600 square feet to 3,000 square feet, and anticipated price point is high 2s to possibly 4s. And what we hope is shown in there is a diverse architecture. We obviously take that seriously. We have our own monotony codes in our neighborhoods to avoid the repetition of product. And so to that end, I think I'll leave it there and just respond to questions as needed for the council.
While we know of no opposition, we'll hold remaining time for rebuttal if we need it.
Okay. Do we have anyone in the audience that is opposed to this?
No, sir, unless Sotir wants to speak or answer questions.
Sotir is our engineer. He's here in case we need any questions answered on the plan.
Council, just for the record, what I've done with the comments that we had that were sent in a written format, since we do kind of verbatim minutes with respect to the zoning agenda, what I'd like to do is just present you all with a copy of those written comments, let you read them at your leisure, and if you choose to make a decision based on what's incorporated in them, they do speak in favor of this particular application. And that copy will be coming to you here shortly.
Okay. Has there been any negative comment, any opposed comments that you know of?
No, sir, I haven't received any, Robin.
Sue, do you have anybody speaking in opposition?
None in opposition.
Okay. And I'll just ask the applicant, have you had anybody in the community speak in opposition to this?
No, we have not, and I think I gave a pretty good litany of the points that were raised at the public participation meeting, and none of it dealt with use. And actually, as we were at Planning Commission and we were leaving Planning Commission and walking out, we noticed a couple of women walked out with us, and we introduced ourselves, and they were residents of the Wyndham subdivision contiguous into the east. And they said they were here because they were so fully supportive of this development, and particularly the detached residential product, and they were just hoping that the Planning Commission would act as they did and that it not go sidewise.
Okay. All right. Well, if we don't have any more public comments, I'll close the hearing now and open it up to council discussion or any questions for either the applicant or the staff. So, that being said, anybody have questions? Julie, I think you said you had some.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll just go through a couple of different things. Some of these may have been points that were brought up by the Planning Commission and or the Design Review Board, so it may be that you guys have already addressed some of these. And Carter, this first one just has to do with the question from the Planning Commission about the movement of the entrance further west. I saw that was a question posed, and I wondered if that had been a discussion point and or if there had been any determination about moving that entrance.
Mike can speak with specificity. As we were pulling this proposal together, there was a reach out, because that's an undeveloped track over there. There was a reach out to that property owner to try and engage them and bring them into the equation so that we could hopefully then get some alignment directly across the way with Crooked Creek. And there was a just dead end stone wall on that effort. Despite that, we did run the interior road over to stub it at that property line in the event that the complexion of that property ownership should change in the future and there might be ability to extend through.
So this being connectivity with Wyndham?
No, going the
Just the entrance
opposite,
to
going
go-
the opposite
to be
way.
across
And
the-
Mike can also speak literally the very first thing that we did before we filed the application, before we finalized our site plan. We did not presume the traffic improvements on Highway 9 nor the point of access. We served that up to DOT, let them be the arbiter, and then come back and say this is the way it needs to be.
I think that's well said. We started there because we weren't sure where to begin on the property. It was under their recommendation that led us to that entry point into the property. And so we sort of followed that right along. And then back to Pete's point, in the event that the adjacent parcel to the west would become a development opportunity, which seemingly it would, we did agree to stub that road. That's why you see that sort of T road to the west side of the property. So it would allow for connectivity regardless of use.
And I don't know if Lynn, if either you or Carter could just speak to that from the I know I hear you guys saying that the DOT obviously was in consult with you, but I just wondered if our transportation folks and or if community development had a comment about the entrance as it relates to traffic.
Well, I can say that Carter's folks did review this plan because they couldn't line it up with Crooked Creek's entrance, for instance, because that is across from the adjoining property, and they couldn't. This spacing was probably the best alternative spacing that they could get and remain within their property bounds. Carter?
Well, that's right. It's a spacing issue with the driveways across the street as well as a sight distance issue. I think the location of the driveway, as it's shown, maximizes sight distance there along Highway 9 and was agreed to by Georgia DOT.
And again, just to clarify, what was the difficulty in having it directly across from Crooked Creek?
That property is not part of this particular
It's not
project.
part of it. So
That's right.
That would be a problem.
We tried.
You could make that happen.
So short of having additional property, this really was as close as you could get. Is that fair to say?
That's right, and maximize the sight distance along the Highway 9 corridor.
So you did review that and you're comfortable with where that is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. In terms of specimen trees, obviously it's noted that there's a 41-inch oak that's being taken out. Can we just can you maybe just talk about that? And I'd like to hear from our staff also in terms of what options were considered as an alternative.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one near the very front, almost in conjunction where the proposed entryway is. And on the kind of ancillary document or the supporting documentation I provided, there's also a view along Highway 9. And that, I believe that tree it's so damaged because of the existing power lines that if it isn't on its quote-unquote last limb, I'd be surprised, which isn't to say that it doesn't fall into recompense, but we are working with the city arborist on even defining if that's still truly living, but in any event, we'll certainly recompense the scale of it.
Mark, do you want to speak to that just in terms of the specimen tree? In other words, were there I know that our premise under our tree ordinance is that we look at alternatives.
Yes, I was well aware of that tree. It is in the middle of where the proposed entrance is. The tree is pretty much one-sided. It's been pruned just over the years because of the power lines, but it does still appear to be a structurally sound tree.
It is structurally sound.
Yes. You have two others that happened, one of them just this past spring. They're on the edge of the property, the eastern portion of the property that was struck by lightning pretty excessively. So the other trees are near the road and not viable trees. I mean, they're in bad shape. But this one, it might not be aesthetically pleasing, but it appears to be a healthy tree.
Okay. And so my question would just stand in terms of what alternatives were there in terms of shifting the entrance so that the tree could be saved. Were there some alternative site plans presented?
We did look at that. I think I can't remember if it was Carter when we were talking to it one time, because they were also talking about trying to line up the road with Crooked Creek, and that just
right,
wasn't going to work out. So really, there wasn't any way that we saw where we could shift that drive to where it would stay away from that tree.
So we haven't seen any plans that would show that that tree would be saved?
That is correct.
That's correct. So we've had one site plan. And again, I don't know that we need to debate the issue, because my question would be, are there some alternatives? Because obviously our tree ordinance encourages looking for alternative approaches, and since it can't be lined up, my question would just be, is there an opportunity to have it shifted, still meet site requirements? So it's a question. As it relates to recompense, this talks about most of the trees would be installed. The word most is just not very specific. Could we talk about whether or not 100% of the recompenses looked to be on this site, 75%? But I need something more than most, please.
Well, let me just address that very quickly. It says that most of the trees would be installed behind certain lots. So they'll all be installed. It's
on the 8 acres?
Yes, ma'am. It's just, I mean, unless for some reason they won't live, and that'll be a field call for our arborist, but he's intending for them to be installed behind particular lots so that they'll provide additional screening.
But they would all be, the intent is to have all recompense on site?
Yes, that is the intent. I think it states in there.
Just that that's not stated, so depending on how this would proceed, I would ask that we would make that clear. And then the other, as it relates to trees, there's a discussion about 4-inch trees for recompense would be the 39 4-inch trees. It doesn't talk about the location, and just because obviously trees matter to the whole of Highway 9, and I know that in our discussion about the Highway 9 guidelines, there's been talk about larger trees, obviously, on those external roadways that would be visible from passerbys. Again, just for specificity, I can't say the word, specificity. I try hard to say the word. Thank you so much. Is that with those 39, are those intended to be on those external areas that would be visible by passerbys?
No, what I intended for those recompense trees was that's where I placed it. There might have been a misread here. The recommended conditions, it says provide a minimum 1 tree per lot. What I was looking at was one 2-inch tree. I was looking at placing the recompense trees on each lot. There are about, 43 lots out there, 39 recompense trees. So place those in the front yard of all the lots, and then all the density trees would be scattered around the perimeter and behind the lots, kind of beef it up there.
Because I guess my question for consideration by this body and also by the applicant would be to consider a larger recompense tree on those streets or on those areas that would be visible from external streets, and that just doesn't seem clear to me. Can you maybe just speak to that?
Well, yeah, and it's a good point, and one that we're considering. What we'll do, we kind of feel like the treatment of Highway 9 is most critical for marketing. So in addition, we have approximately $130,000 landscaping budget that's put together. Of that, not quite half covers recompense trees. The rest is designed solely for the purpose of trying to shroud what we think is a fairly busy state route from this neighborhood. So the treatment of that front will be considerable. I certainly can provide landscape plans as we go forward, but I can promise you that we don't see that we'll use all recompense inside the neighborhood at the exclusion of the Highway 9. We'll do it in accordance with whatever way the arborist wants us to go, but that's to say that we'll also have a full treatment on the front portion of Highway 9, which I think is what you're driving
It
at.
is. I guess my question to you would be, what is the largest size tree you'd be willing to plant as a streetscape tree that would benefit, obviously, the development, just from a selling perspective, but also for those that live across the street and are passerbys? I personally just believe that a slightly larger tree is going to give a larger impact, and I understand that they will grow over time, but I do think that we owe it to those that will be moving in and driving by for a larger tree. And I'd love to see us, if we could, as we consider this application, consider what would be acceptable to you as the applicant for a larger streetscapes tree rather than to leave it up to chance.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that one exactly, because then what I don't want to be able to do is say, well, it's going to be a minimum of a blank inch caliper tree. And
And I
then,
guess that's what I'm looking for. I think along Highway 9 it needs to be a minimum.
well, to that end, though, if you adhere only to that minimum and you can't intersperse with what's appropriate along with, for instance, if you say, well, it had to be a 4-inch or a 6-inch, that may be fine, but then we'd probably want to treat that with equally appropriate and fill in the blank. Unfortunately, I'm not a landscape architect, but I wouldn't want to limit myself just to one size tree and then have you drive by and say, well, geez, that looks awfully strange.
And I don't mean all of them. I just meant that we would have a minimum number of large streetscape trees that would provide an appropriate view as you're driving by, but also living there. And right now it talks, Mark, about 39 4-inch trees, but it doesn't say that a certain number of those would be along Highway 9. So I guess what I'm looking for is that if we were to proceed, that we would have a condition that would set a minimum caliper tree for those that would be viewed by Highway 9s. And Glenn, if you've captured it specifically along Highway 9, I just may not have seen it. Do we have that level of specific?
Yeah, right now it is not in there simply because typically that's not necessarily required for the single-family detached components. I will say that based on the current draft of the new Highway 9 updates, text updates, it would include a tree every 30 feet in the landscape strip with a minimum 5-inch caliper, as we spoke about last week.
And I would just ask that this council consider that then as an additional recommended condition. It
Now,
would be consistent.
The Highway 9 overlay, though, it does not pertain to single-family residential that are not part of the mixed.
That's correct.
So
That's
this-
correct.
this would never
Typically,
mix-
it
this
still
would not
wouldn't
be part of
apply specifically because it's not a mixed-use zoning district, but
my
that is
point-
what has been included in there. So I wanted to kind of, if you're looking for some consistency across
Thank you.
the zoning ordinance.
Right. And the reason
That's the
being that I
closest we've
just
got.
asked for that consideration is that I think everybody's goal is to have that appear to be established and to be attractive. And so, again, I just asked for that to be a consideration. I think right now we don't have a recommended condition that provides a minimum, and I appreciate that from staff, that I think that would be consistent in terms of size of tree. So I would ask just that we consider that as a possible recommended condition. Moving away from trees, if we could speak briefly about detention. Can you speak to the detention facility? I know that this document says that we would encourage something that's urban, et cetera, but can you speak to whether or not you were able to provide an underground detention facility?
What
And
I'll
maybe
do,
just speak to where you're locating the detention?
sure. Sotier Christopher is our engineer on this, and asked him to come tonight for any
Thank you.
technical input. Sure.
My name is Sotier Christopher, live at 280 Setting Down Court in Roswell. As Mike said, I'm the civil engineering consultant for Ashton Woods on this project. We've located the detention pond in the appropriate place, the low point of the site, and where it discharges currently. I have not run and modeled the entire site. We've provided enough area for it.
Can you show us where that is? Is it
That is
towards
in this-
Highway 9? Is it the back?
Back corner.
And relative to what's at that back property line then? Can you just,
The homes that's here.
So that
There are
detention-
residential lots along this back.
So right now that
Also
detention-
Storm sewer that collects.
okay. So the detention facility would be at the very back, that would be in the backyards of existing homeowners?
No,
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
I did meet with three of the homeowners there, including Mary Cole, who I believe was written in tonight. And it's the sensitivity is actually probably most felt.
here.
But that was a discussion point in the public input meeting. What we heard routinely was that most of the proposals that they've seen over the years, they being residents, did show detention in that area. One comment was, well, it's better than what's happening right now because there's no detention, obviously, and it's running off into the backyards of these homes. And the person who was most affected by it, we've already discussed as well, the placement, and he's for it.
Thank you. Just to staff, and I know we've talked about this kind of globally, not so much about this, but especially with the more recent discussion and input that we've gotten from Blue Oliver and Crabapple, and whether or not there are some more neighbor-friendly and just community-friendly sorts of approaches to detention that are more attractive in nature, which obviously moves us closer to that earthen sort of approach, but also the underground facilities and more swales. Have we looked at this with an eye towards some of those suggestions that we're looking at for Crabapple? And the reason for the question is that I'd like to see us approaching every development, including those on Highway 9, including the more community-sensitive sorts of approaches to detention.
We do look at some of those community-type activities during the permitting process. Single-family detached residential, under the stormwater management ordinance and the stormwater management manual, is not permitted for single-family residential, just because it becomes one of those facilities that's out of sight, out of mind. You don't have the typical maintenance performed on those in the residential scenario. And so generally what we try to look for are those above-ground detention facilities, stormwater management facilities that are incorporated more into the site plan and are a more aesthetic part of the community. They tend to be maintained a little bit more. So we do start to look at some of those details when we get into the actual land disturbance permitting part of the process.
Would it be, I'm just curious from the engineer's perspective, right now the language just says that if possible it would be an earthen sort of approach. Can we just say that it shall be? I mean, as opposed to a traditional concrete sort of detention, which we see in too many communities that do end up looking unfortunate? I'm just curious. I would think that
get
you
further along into the design and actually model the hydrology of it, which we will work out during the process. But regardless, I think there'll be that 20-foot landscape strip surrounding the pond that's required by ordinance, which would give a significant screen around the perimeter of the pond.
again, I think what we're trying to move away from are the traditional concrete boxes that are so unattractive, and that there's so many other solutions that are out there.
I try to design around it
Yes.
all day long because it's an expense for my client. So
Sure.
obviously we want to do the earth and berm, and we actually would like to do a 4-to-1 slope, but at this point, not having modeled
Right, too
the
early to
site,
know.
we don't know at this point. So.
And my question, Lynn, for you would just be looking at that condition, would staff have any additional recommendation for how to strengthen that language, just to make sure that we're all getting where we'd like to be? I know it says that walled structures are not encouraged. If walled structures are proposed, they must meet the acceptable design standard, but I think obviously we're hearing from the applicant that that's not the approach you're looking to go.
If I could jump in here, I didn't see where they were proposing a walled structure.
I think that I think that it wasn't clear, and it said that if a walled structure were to be there, that it would. I don't think it was clear. I don't think we had the details as to what it would be, unless
I don't see any indication on the concept.
No, I think that the difficulty is that when it's a concept plan, if we don't have it captured as a recommended condition, that leaves it to chance, and all I'm suggesting is that for the eventual homeowners, as well as the neighbors, that we'd rather not leave it to chance. So I just, if you would look at that, just as we continue to have discussion, and see if there's any additional language that would shore that up. And maybe the thing to do is, I know that in other rezonings in the Highway 9 area, we've captured, and I just want to make sure that that captures it as fully as we have in other areas. Detention trees. And can you just clarify, when you talked about the 2,200, moving away from 2,200 heated floor space to the 2,600 to 3,000, that you, as a result of that, you wanted to go from 20-foot landscape strips down to 15? Did I hear that correctly?
That's right.
What would it preclude you from having a 2,600 to 3,000 square foot heated floor space if you kept the 20-foot?
No.
So you could do both?
Sure.
Okay. And the Planning Commission, just to confirm, the Planning Commission voted with a 20-foot landscape strip, correct?
The
Yes, ma'am.
15-foot alternative was not in front of them.
Right.
Right. No,
It was as we went through, and it seemed that the larger home and the higher sales price was probably better just across the board from a development applicant standpoint and from an immediate surrounding community standpoint. And with that, you're taking up a bigger pad area than if you were down at, when we filed the application, we had, your conditions reflect, we showed a minimum of 2,000 square feet. Really thinking we'd probably go 2,200 to 2,600. And then as we went through it, we said, okay, well, let's go to 26 to 3, albeit that will expand the pad area on that 5,000 square foot lot. And someone buying that higher priced home, we reasonably think, would like to feel that they've got a bit of a backyard. And so that would certainly help. Can he technically do the 20? Yes, but we think from a market purchaser perspective that the 15 would be better.
And in terms of amenity packages, I know it's not stated here. I know that I've heard from some residents in the area that were concerned that there was just not an amenity package. Was that just a function of kind of the business model that you had, or had you looked at an amenity package? And just
We didn't hear that in the public input, but I'll tell you the rationale behind it is sort of twofold. One is that it's a relatively small parcel. What we see is the huge edge here is offering new product that's detached in Milton, which is a rarity. That's probably your first amenity in the schools, regardless of what happens with where. Second driver in that is the HOA costs, that if you burden an HOA that's between, typically the breaking point is 70 homes, but that logic can be applied. Just depends on how much you want to advertise over each unit. But the short answer is that when you only have 30 people, 35, 40, it becomes pretty tough to support the cost of it. So it's not just for just for business reasons that we said, well, let's not include one. I think we'd love to, but it's kind of constrained. So we felt like it probably would be best without it.
Thank you, Mayor. Just final question for Carter. As it relates to trails, sidewalks, or alternative pathways, can you just speak, and I know that this has a recommended condition of stamped concrete sidewalks, but can you speak to connectivity and the whole plan with where we're seeing our alternative pathways going, and whether or not that was a consideration on this site plan?
As it relates to Highway 9, it was, and so the corridor along Highway 9 would comply with our trail master plan. Internal to that, it was up to the applicant.
And so these sidewalks that are proposed meet with the requirements of the trail plan, including that section of Highway 9?
Yes,
in terms
ma'am.
of width and distance from road?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Karen, I think you have a question.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. Number one, it is item 3G, which says 20-foot landscape strip, and you're asking for that to be down to 15.
Correct.
Would you be able to go with something in between? Because I can understand still the need for them to have a yard, but at the same time making sure that we do have some consistencies with our other things if we went with something.
Well, I don't want lost in translation is I understand we're coming before you with something different, so it almost seems like, wow, what is there a surprise here? So to that end, what I'd say is if you'd be willing to consider 15, then please act on that. 17, I don't know if that's in between. I don't know if it achieves what we're going for. I think the only goal here is to try to give the ultimate user of that lot as much yard as possible. The inclusion of the landscape strip, how that evolved over time was just we felt like we've got to treat that area. We know we have to plant a lot there, but when it's turned over to the HOA, we want that to be a strip that the HOA owns in common, not the burden of that individual owner themselves. That was the logic on why call it a strip.
Okay.
If it helps on that consideration, and going back to what Ms. Bailey raised a bit earlier, right now we've got condition 3H talking about 2-inch caliper trees. We were discussing that while some other discussion was going on about the detention facility, is that we would be willing to commit every 30 feet along Highway 9 to a minimum 4-inch caliper tree, with those trees forming a portion of the 39 trees necessary for recompense. And so maybe that helps a little bit here with this 15 versus 20 business.
And those trees there would be planted within the landscape?
Within the landscape strip.
Okay, now, it says item 3B states a 2,000 square foot minimum. Is that what it sounds like here what your intent is really to do?
26 is fine, 2,600 is fine.
2,600.
And that's
Okay.
3B.
Item 3B. Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion if there's,
I think Alan has a question, then we could move forward.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. Thank you, Mayor. Condition 3, I think that's H now, as far as the caliper tree, 2-inch caliper tree per lot. Has there been a consideration into what that tree might be? And I have a purpose for asking that.
I don't remember on the plan what we've called out for, but yes, there is one. We have our landscape architect working with the city arborist, but if there's something specific that you have in mind.
Well, the reason I ask that is because when you have a high-density neighborhood like this, because I live in a high-density neighborhood, and now we're dealing with, here we are 12 years into the neighborhood's history, and now all of the trees are interfering with the sewer lines, and all of them have to come down at some point or the other. And they're having to be replaced with, immature trees that are not hardwoods or that kind of thing. And I want us to be thinking in terms of looking at the root system of the tree and whether or not the tree that goes there is one that's suitable for that, because sometimes developers will just put the tree there and not, they're gone and they don't look back. And then 10 years down the road now we, are in trouble because the whole treescape is gone. Or will have to be replaced of some sort. And we're depending on the HOA to make that happen. The other question I have is in regard to, that might be the only question I had actually, because some of the other questions have been answered. Yeah, I'm good. Just as a council though, and I know Karen is about to make a motion, I would like for us to consider, no one has even mentioned the fact that that this proposed use is contrary to the land use plan that we just passed. And this will be the first rezoning that I'm aware of that has gone before this body since the state approved our land use plan. So right from the get-go, we're being inconsistent. I do realize, however, that this use seems to be consistent with the other uses in the area. However, our comprehensive plan, our CPAC, our planning commission, all the information that came to us that we looked at and approved had office in this area, which I'm baffled now that the planning commission is approving this 5-2. But okay, but I would like for us to have some serious conversation on that, because I am a believer in consistent use of our land use policies, or else we wouldn't have them. We haven't seemed to address that though.
There's a question to Lynn. In your opinion, would you, Pete, you're walking away into as a professional, but would you consider this kind of a down zoning for the property, going from C1 to?
Yes, sir, definitely it's a down zoning. I would say, just to add a little bit, that the Planning Commission did come to that approval recommendation after pretty considerable discussion on just the points that you brought up. It's just one of those odd situations where the existing uses and even the existing adjacent zoning is TR makes it kind of an unusual request for commercial right there.
I think other issue from the applicants, I'm sure, is the market just across the street, and there's a lot of empty office that's been sitting there for quite a while. So it could be years before the market catches up for use for that property. So, okay, do you have any more questions?
No, I don't. Thank
Okay.
I got one
Bert?
quick one. I think in one of these letters it was mentioned that this kind of property in the past couple of years or so has kind of become a dumping ground of sorts. How soon, if this were to get approved, do you plan on moving forward with this and getting some of that stuff cleaned up?
Just the quick history there, which feeds into both questions. It's now owned by BB&T Bank.
Okay.
It was part of our condition in our contract that they would clean up that property if we pursue it. If they don't, we'll do it. We've already budgeted for it. I anticipate if we can reach a decision tonight that within no more than a month it'll be gone by one of us. And I intend to close soon hereafter if we can make a decision. The other point I think Alan made was just about the use, and the property was marketed for about 18 months as its current use, and the value has sort of fallen as it's sat there. And I actually kept approaching the bank saying, would you let me rezone it for residential? And they said, well, no, we don't want to go through that time. And it was only after about 18 months of marketing at C1 with no one approaching them that they let me do it. Now, of course, that's a short-term answer, right? Because the long-term could be, well, would it come back? But it certainly did talk about the sort of the reception of the market, be it speculative or otherwise, or current use for commercial. I also live across the street, so I saw it for years too, and said, well, what in the heck is going on with this thing? That was one thing I heard that I shared was it's an eyesore. It's just sitting there. It could be better. I feel like the proposal we have is fair. It's probably not, it's not a win maybe for all parties, but it's fair, I think. And we hope it's a practical use.
Bill?
Well, first, I commend you for taking the initiative to go forward and try to propose something for this eyesore here. My main concern is the traffic situation and the proximity of your entrance to the entrance to Sunfish, I believe it is next. This issue to be addressed to your engineer certainly impacts you too. Is there any consideration or is there any possibility to combine those two entrances, knowing what a traffic mess it is on Highway 9, particularly making a left turn or westbound turn out of there, westbound turn out of Sunfish, and of course making a westbound turn out of Crooked Creek. I know there's some discussion here in the report about possibly pursuing GDOT with traffic control later on. How do you see all of that coming together?
Those are hard because, my fiduciary duty is to the company, right? So I have to try to go out and figure out how can I get product in Milton. That's my task. And then to that end, you come across a property and you say, well, it's reached a point where we can finally buy it. Obviously, we're not printing money in the home building industry. So, can we figure it out to still place a well-conceived product there, spend the appropriate money in the areas that we think really do matter? And landscaping is absolutely one of them. I think it's a place where you not only get credit, but it's money well spent. And back to Julie's point, it's the budget we've allocated here is about triple what we would typically do for a neighborhood of this scale. So we see that as critical. But to your point, I think it'd be very tough. I don't know how to get there. There's always a physical way to get there. I don't know how to get there financially. You'd have to either involve the owner next to us who does not seem to be willing to participate. And even then, I don't know if that connects us in a meaningful way without saying to that person, we're going to develop a road through your property. Without his plan in front of us, that's awfully tough to do. It does allow us to connect back, obviously, over time into ours. And I do see his zone TR. So if he just moved forward with his property as it is, he could connect into ours, and that would limit traffic probably in a meaningful way out of his neighborhood into ours. long-term planning, at least there is some opportunity there to connect.
I would also comment that coincidentally, we had one of the planning commission members, a resident of Wyndham, and she said absolutely they were not interested in having that traffic segue on over and come out that curb cut.
Okay. Jerry?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve RZ 11-02, request by Ashton Atlanta Residential to rezone from C1 Community Business to TR Townhouse Residential to develop 43 single-family lots on 8.26 acres for an overall density of 5.21 units per acre. With staff's conditions, except for item 3B, for minimum heated floor area shall be 2,600 square feet. For item 3F, I'd like to emphasize the "or" as approved by the Director of Community Development when it pertains to the fence, which would give development staff the flexibility to determine whether or not the fence should be as consistent with what is at Crooked Creek or the 4 board. 3G, provide a 15-foot landscape strip. And then add an item 3I for to plant a 4-inch caliber tree every 30 feet along the Highway 9 frontage.
Second the motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Thurman, a second by Councilmember Lusk. I'll open this up to any discussion. Alan?
Question for Karen. There currently is an I, and you just replaced it.
Looking at
3I, page 21, provide a minimum 1 tree, and it says 2-inch caliber per lot is approved by the city.
3H on here.
Does yours say on?
No, it does say, I'm sorry.
Alan.
You need Julie's glasses.
I like it, Alan.
Well, I scribble all over a freaking page.
You're slipping, man. You're slipping.
We all have reading glasses. We're
Okay,
happy.
thank you. Okay, thank you. And I looked for some of those today, actually.
Sudi, do you have an extra one of those proclamations we did tonight? I can give Alan.
That would come from the youngest person up here, but no.
Okay.
Sorry about
That
that.
didn't come from me, Karen.
Bert, do you have any? Bill, do you have anything? Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say, and this is obviously not part of the motion, but on page 16 of 23, there was a listing of suggestions from the Design Review Board, and I realized that was a courtesy review. But just as a matter of record, I would just ask that you please consider a few of those, including the potential of a street tree on every lot. And again, this is specifically from the DRB, but I think out of respect for that courtesy review, if you would consider a street tree on every lot as they recommended. They talked about light fixtures being to scale and possibly shorter and smaller. And I would just refer you to the Highway 9 design guidelines. This wouldn't require you to do that, but I think it's good input that would help your end product. The other just had to do with no dog-eared privacy fences in a lot of the residential developments. Unfortunately, some of those privacy fences end up working against the whole of the community. Again, that's for your discretion, but I would ask that you please give particular attention to page 16 of 23, as well as any of the Planning Commission comments that may not have been incorporated, because we obviously look for that to be a positive addition to the community. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay, and let me just, before I got a motion in a second, the staff captured the motion, and as the applicant, understand exactly the motion that's been made and the points that Councilmember Thurman had added. Okay, I don't know if we need to repeat that or not. If you want to do that, Chris, just for the record, and that will make sure we're all on the same page.
I copied that the item was read as an approval, as was read in the agenda, with staff conditions. Following modifications, change 3B to modify the square footage from 2,000 up to 2,600 square feet. 3F to emphasize the portion that reads "or is approved" by the community development or director of community development director to determine type as to whether or not a similar product as across the street might make more sense. To modify 3G to provide a 15-foot landscape strip and to include 3I, which would require a 4-inch caliper tree every 30 feet along the Highway 9 frontage.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those were part of the 39, correct? Those trees along
I
Highway
believe
9.
that's what.
As a
Yes.
portion of
Motion.
39.
As part of
The motion didn't say that, but
Yes, the other
Is
part
that
of
the
the
intent?
it
Yeah.
didn't say that.
The intent was for those to be part of the 39, of the 4-inch, 39 4-inch recompense trees that are required, so.
Okay, is that clear? I'm going to ask to vote again, so to make sure that.
Bill, can you second that? Just
Yeah, Bill, you second that. Okay.
All right.
It's part of the 39 trees. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Will the city clerk please sound the next items?
Next item is U1101, VC 1101, requested by Union Primitive Baptist Church, located at 335 Cox Road, to increase the size of the existing fellowship hall, 2,060 square feet to 3,000 square feet, and a concurrent variance to delete the 50-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback along the west property lines to allow the encroachment of the existing driveway, basketball court, portion of the fellowship hall, and cemetery. Section 64-11413A. This is agenda item number 11-068, first presented at April 11th, 2011, regular council meeting. This is being presented by Ms. Lynn Tully.
I would call your attention to the fact that this request does include both a use permit and a variance request. The use permit is for the church, and the variance request is for the setbacks. The subject site does include a little over 3 acres. It was originally on 2 parcels. Those parcels have been combined into one. The subject site does have an existing church, an existing fellowship hall, associated parking, driveways, a basketball court, and a cemetery. Most, if not all of this, was constructed prior to our incorporation as a city. There was an original use permit for the original parcel, U96-005, as well as an original variance, which was given for parking, 95 VC-17. So there are some longstanding items with regard to this parcel and this project. The site plan analysis did reveal that concurrent variance. The variance was to provide a total of 25 parking spaces. Those spaces are still included and, in fact, include an additional 3 spaces. The use permit standards have been met with the proposed expansion hall. The Northwest Overlay District requirements have also been met, with the exception of the variance request. They did conduct a participation plan and held a meeting, receiving some discussion, but not much. We also contacted the City of Roswell, considering the proximity of this project, to see if they had any comments, and they did not. They were not opposed to the proposed development. This project has been taken before the DRB on March the 1st, 2011, and they did provide comment. The staff does recommend approval conditional to U11-01 and VC 11-01 with, again, those recommended conditions that are attached. I will go through specifically the variance items as well. Those items are A, whether the proposed use is consistent with the land use or economic development plans adopted by the mayor and city council. This proposal is consistent with the intent and policy of the current partial plan update to encourage development that is sensitive to the overall setting of the community and contributes to our community's character and sense of place. B, compatibility with land uses and zoning districts in the vicinity of the property for which the use permit is proposed. This proposal is expected to be compatible with other land uses in the surrounding area. C, whether the proposed use may violate local, state, and/or federal statutes, ordinances, or regulations governing land development. As proposed, the use does not violate any known local, state, and/or federal statutes if approved and developed with those recommended conditions. D, The effect of the proposed use on traffic flow, vehicular and pedestrian along adjoining streets, and the proposed use should not generate any increase in traffic based on the fact that the expansion is to the Fellowship Hall and does not increase the number of trips to the site. E, the location and number of off-street parking spaces. Again, we reference back to the 96 variance, which includes a requirement of 25 parking spaces, and they have provided just over that with 28. F, the amount and location of open space. Approximately half of the subject site still remains undeveloped, and we are of the opinion that this development does have adequate open space for the proposal. G, protective screening. There is adequate screening for the proposed development, again referencing back to the open space that's required. H, hours and manner of operation. This is a church. It'll be open on Sunday. So it'll also be open on Wednesday from 6:30 till 9. So nothing unusual in that request. I, outdoor lighting. The applicant does have some security lighting on site. All of the site should be in compliance with the night sky standards of the Northwest Fulton Overlay District. And J, ingress and egress to the property. The applicant's site plan does include a curb cut on Ebenezer Road and 2 curb cuts on Cox Road. This proposal is consistent with the council plan and policies and compatible with the surrounding area, assuming it is developed in accordance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance and our conditions as set forth. And therefore, we recommend approval conditional of U11-01 and VC 11-01. Are there any questions?
Okay, let's start down here. I don't have any questions right now.
Will you come back to me?
Okay. Bert?
No.
Bill? Julie?
Yes, sir, thank you. Lynn, just as it relates to the 25 parking spaces, can you speak to the percentage of those that are perhaps pervious, or I should say 28, of the 28 that are pervious versus non-pervious?
Some of them are gravel. Hold on just a minute. Let me see if I can.
And the point being that the more of those that we can keep as pervious, the better. And I know that some of those are proposed.
I think there's a note on the plan that says the hatched areas represent unmarked gravel spaces.
Yeah,
presently.
I couldn't read that, so I needed the clarity.
It looks like more than half of those spaces are provided as gravel spaces.
And I was just going to say that as we go through
Having a hard
this,
time
maybe
reading
we-
myself.
And perhaps when we hear from the applicant, if we could just to confirm, and whether or not we would indicate that here on the recommended conditions or not, that would be a percentage that would continue to be anticipated. That
It looks like 20 of the 28 are gravel.
Or gravel. So if we could
So-
capture that potentially,
And all new spaces, it looks like are gravel, so.
Okay.
so that would be my question as it relates to keeping that percentage consistent going forward. And my final question was just when this, from a design standpoint, I know it's been to the DRB, but will it be going back to the DRB at the appropriate time in terms of what the construction will appear to be?
Yes, ma'am, for the building permit.
Thank you.
Okay. Karen, do you have any questions?
Not till after we
Okay.
hear from
Alan?
the applicant.
No? Okay. All right. First, I'd like to hear from the applicant and those that are in support of this application.
Mayor and City Council, Scott Reese, Brumlow Reese and Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia. We were retained by Union Primitive Baptist Church to produce a site plan so that they might increase their fellowship hall to meet the changing needs of their existing congregation. In preparation of this site plan, we made the church aware that they would have to obtain a special use permit, and also that they would be subject to the Northwest Overlay District that had been created since their the last time that they built the fellowship hall in '96. So we communicated with them, went through the process. We've tried to bring the existing conditions into conformity, and the only way we can do this is through the asking for the variances to the buffers and the setbacks. Worked with everybody to try to make everything work the best. You will see the parking spaces are gravel, the 20 spaces, so I think that's tried to save all the specimen trees that we possibly could. We're kind of limited as far as where the placement of the addition is with architecture and just the placement of the existing structure. If I can answer any questions, I'll be glad to. As far as one of the other considerations is that we had to reserve area for the, not the initial septic system, but in case there was a failure for a reserve septic system. So that's another reason for the asking of the variance to the setbacks. If I might, on a purely personal level, as a longtime resident, descendant of the early settlers of this area, anything that we can do to preserve the heritage of these handful of small country churches that were formed with the original formation of this county of Milton, I would greatly appreciate it as a descendant of the people that are buried in the cemetery and of the original settlers. Thank you. Todd.
Mayor, City Council. My name is Todd Loyett. I live at 5280 Franklin Gold Mine Road, Cumming, Georgia, 30028. I am a member of Union Primitive Baptist Church. A little history on the church. The church was first constituted in 1828, and it has served the community ever since. Union has been at its present location for over 100 years. Its previous location was the corner of Rucker Road and Highway 40, in which a fire destroyed the church and moved to its present location. There is a historical cemetery over in that area that still remains. In approximately 1998, the fellowship building was constructed, including the dining area of 1,200 square feet with a total building of 2,060 square feet, including a kitchen and restroom facilities. In approximately 2005, the church bought the corner property at Ebenezer Road and Cox Road connecting to our existing property. Site improvements were done by adding concrete driveway to 2 entrances on Cox Road. Originally, there were 3 entrances on Cox Road, in which one was terminated, and 1 entrance to Ebenezer Road. A concrete pad for a basketball was added for our youth. The concrete provided safer access from the road to the church and poured in place concrete for handicap parking and safe access to the church. The previous driveway was all gravel. We meet every Sunday for worship service and have lunch in the fellowship building twice a month. We also have Wednesday night Bible study. We have, on average, 65 members and visitors for Sunday worship service. Our dining area, including food table seats, presently seats about 20 or 65 people comfortably. Our church has a total of 125 seating occupancy. As we look to the future, we realize we will need more space for our dining area, and it's our intent to add on a 30-foot by 31-foot extension. Extending the building long ways with a 1-foot offset in the front is the best for our functionality. No impact to any tree removal, and a flat grade to build on, so the new slab elevation meets the existing elevation. The distance from the property line to the new addition at its closest point is 36.9 feet, which that is the reason for that is part of the variance. The building will have an approximate height of 18 feet. Also, we were requesting a variance for our existing driveway to Ebenezer Road and concrete pad for our basketball area. The design of the building, which we consulted with an architect, for the building to be extended straight across, will have a 1-foot offset in the new structure. The brick from the side of the building, since the building is old, we will not be able to match it for the front. The front will have brick, but we'll remove the brick from the side of the building and use it in the front so we can recycle the brick. It has white vinyl siding on the rear, and we will go to the brick company and on the side to match up the brick as close as we can, and of course we'll use the same gray mortar. We've also contacted Malcolm Sanders with the Fulton County Health Department to see what requirement would be for the additional space for our restroom facility, since we are in a septic tank. I met with him several times, and he said the size of the tank is compliant, and we only need to add 25 feet of new filter-trader line, which we have plenty of room for that and for additional replacement if needed in the future. We've reached out to the community to communicate our request and provide detailed information for our building extension. We provided plans and elevations to our adjoining neighbors and have obtained approvals from those we could reach. We had one opposition from 360 Cox Road. It's an unoccupied home in which the resident through email contact from myself. They offer to withdraw their opposition if they were the only one holding up our request. The first communication email was sent to Robin, and Robin forwarded it on to me, and we made contact from there. That's all I have, and thank you for consideration.
Okay. We have any other speaking in support of this application?
No, sir, and none in opposition.
None in opposition. Okay. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing now and open it up to questions from council, either to staff or the applicant. Anybody? Alan?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Anybody else have a question? Any quick
No,
question?
I just want to say that I went and visited the site over the weekend, and it is one of our treasured historic churches in the city of Milton, and I think it's very important that we do whatever we can to make sure that they stay part of the city.
I would like to add that if you look at the names on the tombstones in the cemetery, you can see the date lines when the first burials were, which were in the late 1800s, which coincides when the church was moved to that site.
Good.
And you also see Coxes, Kings, Dangers, and all sorts of other founders of our area buried in the cemetery, and families still attending the church from those family lines.
Good. Julie?
And I was just going to say, that as an extension of that, I would really encourage, and we'll do that also, but if our staff can encourage to have you guys get in touch with our Historic Preservation Commission so that we can help to highlight the history of the church and also the history of the cemetery. I think it's really important that we help to educate folks about the history, and I think that we can do that in a more proactive way, working with the city, the church, and also our commission.
Okay. Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item 11-068 with staff's recommended conditions on page 16 and 17 of their report dated 4/18/11.
Second motion.
Okay, I've got a motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember Lusk. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, City Clerk, please stay on the next item.
Next item is ZM 11-01, requested by Charles Fight, located at lot number 9, Atlanta National Subdivision, Crooked Stick Drive, to modify condition 1E, RZ 85-181, to reduce the 100-foot building setback along the south property lines to 50 feet, and to reduce the 100-foot building setback along the west property line to 40 feet. This is agenda item number 11-069. First presentation was on April 11, 2011, at the regular council meeting. This is being presented by Ms. Lynn Tully.
Before I start our presentation, I'd like to let you know that the applicant has requested by letter to withdraw this item until the to defer the item to the May 16th council agenda in order to follow up on some additional concerns he had regarding his original request. If you'd like, I can continue the presentation, but we did advertise it for public hearing, and so we should probably hold the hearing portion at least.
Yeah, let's,
I'll say, I want to ask, do we have any?
well, that's what, yeah, if we've got any, do we have any public
There's no
here
public
or comments? So would that, would we be okay with that if we have none, then closing the public
Re-advertise?
hearing and re-advertising? Is that okay, Paul? Yeah.
Mayor, I'll make a motion if the public hearing is closed.
All right.
That we
Karen?
defer ZM 11-01 until the May 16th hearing.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Thurman, second by Councilmember Bailey, to defer this item until the May 16th meeting due to the applicant's request. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. The City Clerk, please on the next item.
Next item is RZ 11-03, to amend Chapter 64, Article 7, Division 5, State Route 9, Overlay District. Agenda item number 11-070. First presentation at April 11th, regular council meeting, discussed at April 18th work session, presented by Ms. Lynn Tully.
These are those recommended changes to the State Route 9 Overlay District. If you'll refer to the purpose and intent that's on your desk there. I have attempted to include all those comments that we had from work session last week. Those are shown in yellow highlighted section to call them out. I'll walk through them very quickly. I'll walk through those very quickly, and if you have any questions, just stop me as we go through. On page 2, under stormwater management facilities, we've changed section 1088B to read, facilities that are located above ground shall be located in the least conspicuous area of the site as engineering standards will allow. We separated that and included in C that above ground stormwater management shall be designed to create a natural look. And those two things were originally in one bullet. The next change was under 64-1090 on page 3. I removed Bethany Bend Road and just made it Bethany Bend. I know that was something that came up. And then under C, each 30 linear feet of landscape strip shall include a minimum of one 5-inch caliper hardwood shade tree. So that's for each 30 linear feet. There's one 5-inch caliper hardwood shade tree, as approved by the city arborist. And I spoke with him about this specifically, and as long as this is narrowly confined, which it is, it's confined to these landscape strips identified in A, so it's confined to those major roadways. I think we can get those to work within those constraints. Moving along onto page 5, section 64-1092J, under fencing, I added when a fence is located on a commercial site, the required fences shall also include a minimum 3-foot wide landscape strip on the exterior of the fencing. This landscape strip may be included within any required landscape strip per section 64-1090A. So again, we're looking at the fencing having some landscaping. We're not saying they have to be trees or necessarily, but to have some addressing of the ground right adjacent to the fencing on the exterior where those fences are required. In K, I removed Bethany Bend Road, replacing it with Bethany Bend only. Moving further, page 8, under lighting, section 64-1094G, I clarified in G that the shoebox and Cobra head light fixtures as typically used in parking area lighting and exposed neon lighting as typically used on building facades and architectural features are prohibited. And that's simply to clarify that those things are exterior lights, exterior on buildings. And then added I, which was under much discussion, and that states, excuse me, except that each commercial establishment shall be entitled to a single exposed neon or LED sign which may only be illuminated during periods when the commercial establishment is open for public business. Such sign, excuse me, such sign shall have a maximum sign face of 4 square feet and shall be positioned on the interior as a window sign no more than 5 feet from the main entrance of the commercial establishment. Please note that the sign is expressly prohibited from blinking, flashing, fluctuating, and/or may not be animated in any way. That is kind of a restatement of what's already in the sign ordinance, but I figured we might as well put it in there as well, just to be clear. Again, it includes the 4 square feet maximum, not necessarily because that's what's mostly out there, but because that's what's consistent with the sign ordinance today. We have a maximum window sign size of 4 square feet, and so I just carried that over, feeling like consistency was maybe the better error to make in this particular case. Yes, sir.
How do you measure the area of a neon of a neon sign?
Sign faces are described in the definitions as, and I think it's measured, and I'll skip to it if I can. You'll give me a moment. Measured by the largest geometric form that could include it. So it's square, rectangle, hexagon, whatever you can, as long as you can include the entirety of the sign. That's how it's typically measured.
I'm assuming you're clarifying that you're not trying to measure the
You're not
actual
measuring
neon.
the width of the neon tube.
It's the entire face
No,
of the
No, you have to
sign.
be able to draw some kind of
You
shape
draw
around it.
the perimeter of
Yeah.
it.
Yes, sir.
It's eight-sided, up to 8 sides.
Up to 8-sided, thank you.
Would you
There we go.
Up to 8 sides, you can measure up to, like, not just a square, you can have up to 8.
Up to an octagon.
That's to accommodate things like Kroger, where you got the G that goes way down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, Lynn.
All right, the next item, Section 641095, and I'd ask you to look at this pretty closely. This is the section where we included those single-family detached dwellings in mixed-use zoning districts. So it reads, as proposed, this section shall apply to all properties within the area delineated on the attached map, State Route 9 Zoning Overlay District, January 2011, except single-family detached dwelling units unless specified herein. The next sentence then says, the building materials and architectural design standards in this section shall also apply to single-family detached dwelling units located in the mixed-use zoning districts and adjacent to the following streets: Windward Parkway, Deerfield Parkway, Cogburn Road, State Route 9, Webb Road, Morris Road, and Bethany Bennett. If I've captured that correctly, then we will move on.
Any comments on that? Okay.
All right. On page 12, section 641096H, I included, there was discussion about additional bike racks being required for larger buildings. So we included additionally, 1 rack shall be required for each 15,000 square feet of development in a multi-tenant center, and 1 rack per 50,000 square feet shall be required for any single tenant 50,000 square feet in size or greater. And then K was added, where multi-use trails are available to a commercial site, credit may be allowed to reduce the required number of parking spaces. Credit for providing spaces for alternative vehicles, golf cars, and other approved trail transportation shall be given at a rate of 1.5 required spaces for each alternative vehicle space, with a maximum reduction of 10% of the required spaces. So that gives a credit for, we approve segways and golf carts on multi-use trails, and those connect, we're all square. All right. I think that was it. Those are the last of the changes for this section.
Okay.
Now, to go back through, if I need to, this includes changes that incorporate those requests, or excuse me, those recommendations from the Highway 9 Guidelines Committee, as reviewed by the Planning Commission, as well as includes a new Deerfield Overlay Zoning District, which is included within the State Highway 9 Overlay District, to accommodate those properties that are only on Deerfield and within that Deerfield master planned area.
Karen, all right.
Thank you for doing all that. I think you captured most of our things, and my only comment is a 4-foot neon sign is too big.
4 square feet.
I mean, 4 square foot neon sign. A 2x2 neon sign, that's neon is just
What's the typical open sign?
typical.
1 by 2?
Yeah, I'm thinking,
1 by 3?
a 1.5 by 2 at 3 square feet is more than adequate for a neon sign.
And they vary. They vary all along that corridor.
What was the variation? What was your typical?
Oh, gosh.
Joe was here.
Yeah, he can tell you. That's what he texted him.
I'm doing a guesstimate
Yeah.
of somewhere around 18 inches tall being really the max, to about.
I'm thinking
max
18 by 2 feet is
2
long.
feet.
Yeah,
No,
it's
still
more
pretty
than
big.
enough.
So that would be 3 square feet.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if
That's my only comment, is I think 2 by 2 neon is a little too bright.
Okay, Julie?
A couple quick questions. One, and I'll echo the thank you. I know that you spent some time to go back and capture our thoughts.
Yeah, I thought you did good.
On the I, on the neon signs, I too have some concerns with this. Size is one of them. The other is just that the Highway 9 Steering Committee has not seen the benefit of this language as it relates to signage, and I know that it's been a discussion of that committee. Can you also speak to whether or not we also have a sign committee that's working on signage that would include Highway 9?
Well, let me touch on the first part of your question first. The Highway 9 committee, the Guidelines Committee, did talk about signage and lighting and decided to defer the majority of that discussion to any updates in the sign ordinance. So they really kind of stayed away from most of that. They did meet in conjunction with the Planning Commission at a work session specifically to go over these guidelines. This was brought up again at that work session, and they decided to leave it the way it originally was, prohibiting neon lighting of any type. The second part of your question was whether or not there was a sign committee. Right now we have kind of it's not an appointed committee, it's simply a group of planning commissioners. There are 2 planning commissioners actually that have volunteered to help work on some updates that are specifically targeted in the sign ordinance now. They do include loosely, again, some citizenry. They have asked for some input from sign companies as well as some input from realtors and others and business owners in the area. Again, like I said, it's not a formal committee, but they are working on some recommendations that they're going to bring back to the Planning Commission and ask the Planning Commission to make recommendations to you all.
Thank you. And my only question with that, one, incorporating Karen's thought about, what's the right size if this is going to be considered. I continue to be concerned about neon signage because we've heard from a lot of citizens that are concerned about neon signage. Just a suggestion would be, because we are looking at the sign ordinance, whether or not we would want to set this aside, not to ignore it, but to allow for that group, the committee or the non-official committee, but it's a committee. Anyway, it's a group of folks that are working on the sign ordinance along with staff, at least so that we don't incorporate something that would somehow be either in conflict with what they're having a discussion about. It just concerns me because I know that this was on our agenda only a week ago, and I, again, applaud the quick turnaround. But because signage is something that I think a lot of citizens and businesses have interest in, I'd feel better if I felt this had been vetted more than just 7 days, because I'm not sure that folks have had the attention span to focus on this in particular. So I just would ask for that consideration, not to put it aside forever, but just to incorporate the suggested language as a part of what the sign ordinance is being reviewed as, so that we wouldn't have any unintended consequences of folks feeling that we were not being as transparent as we needed to be. Just a thought.
On just 3I, just that.
Just on that one item, because signage is a sensitive topic. Again, not to say that this wouldn't ultimately, with an adjustment to size, get approved, but I just would ask for our consideration of that.
My thought is, if we don't include it in here, staff has got to start enforcing it.
Well,
It's going to be a nightmare.
that was the only question I had, was this is an immediate concern, I think. And to Julie's point, I totally understand, and, we're all concerned about neon signs, but I think the intent of the council was just to address these neon open signs. So, I personally think we could probably do that with our common sense, that if we go to the 3 square feet or whatever, because what we think would encompass just what most people are using as open signs. I know we can't dictate what they say. But that would be my suggestion, is that maybe we want to include that in here. We can always go back and change it if the sign, if they come up with some other suggestions. But I think it puts us on
If you want to keep it in here and you want to be ultra restrictive, which I think we can, I would drop it down to 2 square feet.
I'm concerned that
would that cover most of,
It covered everyone I could just find as I did a quick look on the internet.
Okay.
I will say,
They're
just
typically 24 by 12 or 24 by 11.
for transparency's sake, I did alert the committee, because they're meeting tonight, that we would have this on the agenda tonight, and let them know what the proposal was and what the verbiage was. So they're aware of it. Now, obviously, they didn't have time to respond necessarily, but they are aware of it.
Or if you don't want to set it aside, and we'll come back to it, we can do that too.
I personally think we need to move forward with it, and we can always go back and change it if the sign, we do change the sign ordinance. So, Bill?
Yeah, I think we've kicked this can down the road long enough, and I think we've heard from the business community up and down Highway 9, certainly last week from Joe Longoria about the concern with signage on Highway 9. I'd propose, I'd agree with your 2 square foot proposal there. And I think we need to incorporate it, move forward on it, and then the next part of it is let's establish a committee or a study group to get back into the sign ordinance citywide and address all of these issues. Let's engage the business community, realtors, and everybody else that's a stakeholder in that effort. We've been talking about economic development out here for the last couple of years, and I think signage is a key part of not only publicizing the businesses that we have, but attracting more businesses into our community. So I'd like to see us move forward on revisiting our sign ordinance. But I'll go along with the 2 square foot proposal.
Thanks, Mayor. Is there, Lynn, is there a reason why, and I asked this question of Ken, I guess it was week before last, and, or last week. Is there a reason why we retained the must on section 64-1089B, page 2? That is the only place that I can find in this whole document that we say must instead of shall.
1089B.
B.
Oh, that is that section that was pulled by the Planning Commission. So that section, again, I'll have to remember back if I presented that at work session or not, but that section, that amenity section,
Yes.
Was pulled for additional review. The Planning Commission did not recommend that move forward. So it's shown here, but there's a note which speaks to that we want to look more into defining what those public amenities really are. They felt like it was a little too loose for them to be comfortable with recommending to you all at this point in time.
Well, this is, unless I'm not reading it correctly, B just refers to the type of benches and stuff.
Yes, sir.
Not
You're
necessarily.
reading it correctly, but that's part of the amenities.
But Alan, you're asking the question, why does line 2 of section 64-1089B say must versus shall?
Mm-hmm. Well, now in the mini area must be provided. That's also A too, but that whole section is must.
Yeah. We can change those to shalls when we bring it back to you.
But that is
we'll not
be
bringing that
part-
back separately.
That's not before us,
That's correct.
according
ma'am.
to the Planning Commission's recommendations, what you're saying.
Even
That's
though
right.
it's in this document.
Is it because the picture is here on the second page, the comments over here on the
Yeah.
page
Okay.
adjacent to it, and it's just because the track changes stuck a comment over here because of the light that's here?
Yes.
Okay.
It
So,
applies to the
that makes
entirety of that
sense.
section.
So that whole section is being set aside.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
is.
It's
Just
just
the
not
track
that it's-
changes, throw the comment over here under the pretty picture.
Okay, so the motion, if we approve it, we'll need to say that because it's not what's being proposed.
I apologize if that was unclear.
And when is the suspense date for when that might come before us? Because I consider that one of the most important parts of this document.
Robin, do we happen to have that on the May agenda for Planning Commission? I didn't think so. It would be probably set aside to the June Planning Commission, which would mean it would come back before you all in July.
Okay. The other question I have, and this may be for Mr. Fricky, if we look on page 8, and if we were talking about neon lights again, up in G, where it says, shoebox and cobra head light fixtures is typically used, blah, blah, blah. Exposed neon lighting is typically used, are prohibited. And then in I, we have the exception to G. And I haven't seen it like this. Should there not be a cross-reference to the to the strict prohibition in G, shouldn't there be a cross-reference to the exception in I?
To the extent Section G is intended to, or excuse me, Section I is intended to be an exception specifically from G, it would be best to have that specifically referred to.
So it
in
needs
I.
to say except as specified in paragraph
As an exception
I.
to the prohibition in Section G or.
Okay.
So we need to add.
And there also appears to be redundancy with W on page 12, and I didn't know if that was a redundancy or if it was addressing some other exposed neon lighting on page 12. Why we needed it in both places. And if we do have it in both places, then we need to provide that exception. Paragraph W, exposed neon lights are prohibited, or exposed neon light is prohibited. Is that talking about some other kind of neon light?
No, it's talking about lighting around architectural features. And I know that that's been crossed out, but that was the original intent.
Is that clear based on the section title, what we're talking about, or do we need to add some verbiage back in?
If that prohibition was intended to be limited, the limitation should be clearly spelled out.
And we probably should add that language back in then. So that it would read, exposed neon lighting, outlining and detailing building features is prohibited.
Anybody else have any comments on Julie?
I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I was concerned with opening back the door to neon lighting. I understand that we want businesses to reflect that they're open, and I just would suggest that there's a lot of wonderful cities and communities that are able to identify the fact that they're open for business without having neon lights. Charleston being a great example, with all those history buffs that love historic preservation. I think that we really can promote economic development and still shy away from neon signage, which is pretty counter to a lot of the design standards that have been in place. Again, I'll just say I think we've just identified a few places where perhaps we haven't fully vetted the full prohibition with this exception. I believe that all of this should be valid for discussion purposes. It concerns me that we're not allowing committees that are in place in the Planning Commission to at least comment on that one item. If this were to proceed, I think that last time we talked about it, it was made clear that this would not apply then to other overlays, and I want to make that clear tonight. But I would respectfully ask that we respect those other entities that have looked at this to date and at least give them a month to look at it and provide us their input. So I say that and appreciate your consideration.
Mayor, I'd like to make one comment.
All right.
I'm not at all comfortable with us having unofficial committees. I mean, I just do not feel comfortable with having a committee that is made up of members that haven't been appointed by the council, that we don't even know who is on the committee, that the public doesn't know who's on the committee, doesn't know when they're meeting. I just really feel like if this is going to be looked at, it needs to be looked at by an official committee, or else the Planning Commission as a whole needs to do it in a public thing. I think as far as transparency, unofficial committees are not a good thing for us to have.
Let me just comment on that. In fact, Chris and I and Lynn have talked here recently. I guess I'll start it. I've been a proponent now for quite a while, and we all talked about in previous meetings about our staff maybe looking at our sign ordinance and whatnot, and somehow this got started just by talking about getting some ideas from some businesses and whatnot and some volunteers, and somehow or another through people volunteering, it ended up being just a couple of business people, and then I know a member of Planning Commission showed up, and it never really was formed into a committee or whatever. So You know, and yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going. I know, you know, staff's been working with these few individuals, and you know, sometimes somebody'd show up, somebody they wouldn't. So, I think it's kind of going down a path that is not good. It needs to be either set up as an official committee, or maybe have the business community or the Milton Business Alliance to. They're the ones that hear the issues and all that. So, you know, maybe have them come up with some let our business community come up with some recommendations to present to us or to our planning commission or our staff to look at. Here's what we'd like to see. Maybe we're right here now. Here's what we'd like to see, and then have us something that we can discuss. Rather than right now, I feel like it's not being productive.
I just feel like we've lost a little transparency because nobody knows who's on this, you know.
Yeah, so I wouldn't even say it's obviously not an official committee or an ad hoc committee or whatever. It just started out with some people said, yeah, we'll come up with some ideas and maybe, you know, present them to you and let your staff look at them and whatnot. So I just think it's kind of gotten off track. So just so you know, we have talked last week about that, and you know, we've got to figure out something, and maybe we could just get staff's thoughts on that and present to the council and see how we want to go moving in the future on that. So,
Let
Bill?
me address that just really quickly in kind of how we got started, and only because I have a good planning commission that's just very passionate about what they do, and very admirably they wanted to participate in making some changes and that the sign ordinance is just one. They've got several little projects of items that they've seen that, you know, need to be changed, and they want to participate, you know, kind of a little bit more deeply in making those changes. And so we've kind of set out a couple of planning commissioners for several of these smaller projects to start looking at with staff. And what has happened is, yes, they've invited for some input here, and invited for some input there, and it's kind of grown into a little more formal, unofficial committee, but still unofficial. And yeah, there's probably, I believe that there are some issues with that as well, and we'll work to make these more formal committees as necessary, and or to work on them as staff and bring them from staff as much as possible. And of course, as staff, part of our duty is to solicit some input and some comments, but not necessarily through a committee format.
Yeah, and maybe that suggests it. You know, think through that in our next meeting, and just reports or whatever. Run by your thoughts with the council and see which direction.
But I like the mayor's idea. I mean, just get together with the Milton Business Alliance, advertise it, let anybody who wants to show up at the meeting show up, and then that way, you know, there's complete transparency with it.
And I'll tell you why I like that, and I think it really benefits all parties and all concerns on the issue, because if you set up a committee and you've got some folks with you've got some folks that are involved in the city or on a board or whatnot, and then citizens and all this, sometimes people can get led in a direction or perceive something that's not there. Whereas, you know, okay, if one of us or, you know, like someone on a board is involved in it, it's like, okay, is this, you know, are we making the decisions now? It's almost better to get a blank slate, you know, get some ideas, and then we can discuss them and move forward with that. So anyway, so, you know, next meeting or so, if you guys can give us some ideas, and we'll see which direction the council wants to go. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. If we can just go back to I think that the original discussion with staff was that staff was, and this was my perception all along, was that staff was pursuing evaluating our sign ordinance, and that specifically within that review, we weren't opening up the entire sign ordinance to redo it, to rewrite it in its entirety, but that there were specific items, and I believe that Councilmember Hewitt was part of this, kind of the genesis of this process, was to identify what were some of the top issues that we've heard from over time.
I did part of it, but he was the top
confused between mayor and mayor pro tem, you know. But in particular, the handful of items that were really those issues. So I just want to make sure that as we have this discussion, that we're not suddenly going back to let's rewrite our entire sign ordinance. And I say that from the perspective that we've had a lot of folks, citizens, businesses, many, 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 many hours in official committees that have weighed into this as subsets of our overlays, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that we're now suddenly not reneging on what we first committed to do when staff first took on the review of our sign ordinance. So could we maybe just get a level
I'll have to get my brain
understanding?
around that and bring you back.
Because I'm now a little
response.
confused as to whether or not are we addressing kind of some specific items, or are we now saying that we're going to go back and reopen Pandora's box as it relates to the sign ordinance in totality?
Just to confirm, it started out, and I had the suggestion of, to staff and from, everybody, look, let's look at some of the top 5. I just said 5, but just an example. What are you as staff seeing that seem to be hurdles or stumbling blocks or whatever? And, bring those back to us and let's discuss them. And, again, I think as Lynn said, I think they were moving down that path. But again, just you guys get your head around it. The next meeting, just tell us what you think and what direction you think we should go, and then we can run it by the council and see what we were to do.
That's still kind of the initial idea, correct? We're looking at those top.
Well, what we were doing
5.
is we were kind of looking at a top 5, top 6, just a top, whatever.
Whatever of the major issues.
Who knows?
There might be 3 or it might be 10.
We tried to not do that in a vacuum. I mean, and to the extent that we involved some external input into doing that. Although, frankly, I don't need another committee to look at a sign ordinance. I mean, if we need to have somebody look at it, we need to let the planning commission look at it. I mean, we're still in that process. I believe that the appropriate thing to do is to downsize the number of committees we have rather than upsize. So to the extent that we need a committee to look at it, the planning commission, I think, is the right group to do that. I'll just be real candid. I mean, Lynn and I'll talk. I'll be real candid with you. If we open up the whole sign ordinance, we can do that. But I will be sitting here probably 2 years older when it's before you all for a final vote. So, I mean, that's just one of the realities of opening up a sign ordinance is we all age by a couple of years between the time we open it and close it. So let Lynn and I put our heads together and bring you a recommendation.
Sure.
It might be a bigger scope than what it initially was, but it might not be the whole way there saying, gosh, let's open the whole thing up. I don't know tonight, but that was the path we were going down, was the top 5 with a little bit of external input. And maybe
I'll just say it seemed like that was a
My
good
point
direction.
was, I think we need an official group, whether it's planning committee or if it comes out of staff. I'm really not in favor of just doing an ad hoc committee out there. I guess I misspoke there. But
I
if
think
I
the
could,
planning commission's the right group.
Yeah.
I think they get their feelings hurt if we didn't use them, honestly.
I can see that.
But I almost, and again, let's let you guys give us your suggestions. But it's almost like, when a zoning applicant comes up, they've got to present something and go to staff and get some input and then present it to us rather than, or work with staff. Okay, does this fit in the rules and regulations and is this reasonable or whatever? So, again, you're a professional, Lynn and Chris, and we're all open to hearing what you guys say. And yeah, I think that was the initial direction we were going on, but it's just maybe sidetracked a little. So just firm that up and make sure everybody's on the.
I guess we're still talking about these amendments, are we not?
Yes, we moved on to the next agenda item.
I must have cut me asleep.
Tom.
I am a history buff, and as a history buff, I haven't recognized any historic buildings in Highway 9 overlay. I think we're talking about here is a different commercial culture right now, and this issue with the neon open sign has come up, and I think we need to address it. Either approve it here or deny it, and if we're going to deny it, then we need to go out and have everybody out there pull their open signs down. So I think that's where we are with this point now. So
the only
just
suggestion,
to clarify a point, I am a history buff. I thought you were referring to me. So.
No, to be honest, I'm not. I mean, I'm a history buff. I think a lot of us, hopefully, we all
well, this
care
is
about
not a
the history.
historic area here.
No, then I will take, Mayor, if I may, I am going to address the comment, because the point is that whether it's a historic area or not, the whole of Milton has, and I think we've heard from businesses as well as citizens, is that it doesn't have to be a historic structure to still fit into the area, and we can have a difference of opinion in terms of what signage is appropriate. And so when I refer to history, I would hope, Councilmember Lusk, that you're not the only history buff on our council, since so much of Milton is represented by history. I consider myself a history buff as well, and I think Karen Thurman does, as do others. So with all due respect, my point about neon signage is that there are historically identified communities where the whole of the area may not be historic, but where the community, citizens, businesses want to highlight a particular look and feel, and that signage is one of those things that either complements that mission and vision, or it sometimes can detract from it. So when I brought up Charleston as an example, I think it's a vibrant community that has great economic development, and they also happen to have pretty detailed sign ordinances that speak to open signs, et cetera, that aren't necessarily neon.
I understand. We've worked in Charleston before. I understand what Charleston's all about. This is not Charleston. I think we're making something out of something.
Yeah. And again, we're at that point now. Here's our options are. We can pass this document as written. We can, there's been some conversation of maybe making it 3 square feet instead of 4 square feet. There's been some conversation of 2 square feet. There's been conversation we can take the whole neon sign issue out of here. My personal opinion is, in all respect to everybody's comments, and I know we want to be different and better in Milton, but this one issue, and I certainly don't like neon signs and don't want to see neon signs all on buildings and whatnot. But in our commercial areas, and especially Highway 9 and future, with however 140 turns out, when you've got city lines that go back and forth, I think we would be doing if we didn't allow open signs, I think we'd be doing our businesses and citizens, because obviously they depend on the businesses, a disservice when there's so many different lines in Roswell, Alpharetta, Forsyth, and everybody else can have an open sign, and all of a sudden, take that back, open sign, a small neon sign that's 2 square feet, we're doing a big disservice to our citizens and our businesses. So anyways, that's my personal opinion, is that I would think we would go ahead and approve this document with the sign, which we'll call it an open sign, although we can't say what's going to be on it. And it's up to somebody that makes a motion if they want to, make it a certain size or delete it. But I think we need to make a decision tonight on that one issue, not open up the whole sign ordinance, but, we're putting our staff in a tough situation. Alan?
All right. I would like to make a motion, but I have a quick question before I do that. Oh, you need to say something?
But before we get to, since we're discussing this section I,
yes.
I would request that we make just one little bit of clarification on the last sentence to the language, such that it reads, please note that the sign is expressly prohibited from blinking, I'm sorry, this is on page 8, expressly prohibited from blinking, flashing, or fluctuating, and may not be animated in any way. The and or.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Okay. And then a question for you, Mr. Fricke. If the Planning Commission would like to more time to consider page 2, section 64-1089, and that's a new section in this ordinance. When I make my motion, should I just hold that in reserve? Yeah.
Yes, sir. If you just state that that is reserved,
okay,
we'll include it as reserved in the
all right. Well, in
ordinance.
that case, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 11070 with the following exceptions. The first one being on page 2 of the document that was provided to us tonight, section 64-1089, outdoor public amenity areas. That entire section shall be reserved. In addition, on page 8, there should be some sort of cross-referencing language between G and I to allow for the exception in I of the neon light, of the neon sign. And that neon sign on the third line should change from 4 square feet to 2 square feet. And the last sentence should read, please note that the sign is expressly prohibited from blinking, flashing, or fluctuating and may not be animated in any way. And on page 12, paragraph W, that should read, exposed neon lighting, outlining and detailing building features is prohibited.
Could you read that one more time, please, on W?
W should read, exposed neon lighting, outlining and detailing building features is prohibited.
I'll second your motion.
You're finished with your motion?
Done with my motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Tart and a second by Councilmember Thurman, and I'm going to hope that, or count on staff has got it as well as we've got it on film. If we're not clear, we're glad to have it reread, but you're comfortable with it, Chris and Lynn and Alan and Karen goes there.
Can we get the specific language for the cross-referencing?
Okay. Sure, for the record, you want to...
Some sort of language.
Okay.
All right, I've got some proposed language.
You want to, yeah, Lynn, you want to mention that, make sure, Alan?
The cross-referencing between G and I.
I've got
On
that we
page
would add
8.
to the beginning of G, or of I, as an exception to the prohibition in G.
Karen?
Community.
Oh, no, that's just what I captured when you were saying what it should sound like. Okay. That's what I wrote down.
Would you like for me to restate the entire motion?
No.
Just that one section.
Okay. Karen, if I may, did you second my motion?
I seconded it. Go right
You
ahead. and I'll
withdraw
second
it? Okay, I'd like to fix my motion. I want to, when I said cross-reference G to I want the specific language in I to read, as an exception to the prohibition in G of this section, each commercial establishment shall be entitled, and then the rest of it reads, in all the way except for the change that I would like to have as far as it being 2 square feet maximum, and the last sentence, the language change that we had there. Please note that the sign is expressly prohibited from blinking, flashing, or fluctuating, and may not be animated in any way.
And I'll re-second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Everybody clear? All right, any discussion?
I have a question. Thank you, Mayor. Earlier, when we were talking about the fact that this had not gone before the Planning Commission in terms of the specific language and modification for neon lights, as well as the Highway 9 Guideline Committee, I think I heard either staff or the mayor mention that when this then goes back, because obviously they're going to be reviewing the section that was held in reserve, can we just confirm that they would at that time have the opportunity to make any recommendations or to concur with this language? Because I think I hear that there's an enforcement issue at the moment that's perhaps driving this to be included right now. Maybe that was for emphasis. So, is that accurate, that part of what's driving this language in the immediate for the Highway 9 area is that there's a code enforcement issue?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, that there is an issue, and it has been...
We've been just delaying.
Well, it's been difficult.
Trying to get in, and I think you'll recall I even brought it up during a council meeting, was to generally get the feel from the council. You know, I was hearing that there was a disconnect between what was on paper and potentially what was the view of the council with respect to this one item in the Highway 9 area.
So I just want to...
You're right, there's a disconnect.
And then, I guess my other question was to confirm that this document's going back to the Planning Commission as a result of that section that's been held in reserve. Would there be anything that would, because I am concerned about an entity that spent so much time and that we say we want that entire Planning Commission to review our items, would they then have the benefit of reviewing this, making any recommendation? I think the mayor had mentioned that, of course, they could then make suggestions or concur with it 100%. Just for transparency purposes, I'm always concerned about making sure that we haven't put something in that they didn't consider.
However we proceed, and whatever changes are even considered, at some point would go through, whether the Planning Commission is the official committee or not. I'm going to assume, and that we would all anticipate that it would go through a formal process. It would go to the Planning Commission. It would come to us, And we would, be totally transparent, and
But
it's going to take some
it
time.
would follow our
Okay.
text amendment process.
I
Now,
mean,
like I said,
including this
the-
language as well, because, for the record, I am concerned about neon lighting. I think, that goes without saying. We've heard from citizens that are concerned about it, and I don't want to ignore that. And we've heard from planning commission members, because the document that came to us said that it was prohibited. And so just with that in mind, I want to make sure that if this passes this evening, it's with the understanding that that planning commission and/or the Highway 9 committee has the opportunity to go and look at that language that is perhaps being incorporated tonight from an enforcement standpoint, and it can be reconsidered.
Let me just, I'm going to answer the best I can.
Okay.
And that is that I have absolutely no problem with the planning commission or anybody looking at anything. And we certainly could take it to them. What I need to know, this is one of these times, though, that I need, because I've got one council member that's asking for something, I need to know if that's the will of this council.
Let me clarify
to
my
take it to planning commission, if you all want the comments that they come up with.
Doesn't this document, didn't this go back to the planning commission?
well, as it stands, the only thing that would go back to planning commission for review is the amenities area. Now, at any time, they can choose to bring something up. However, we just have to advertise it that way. Like I say, when we would, to advertise for that June meeting, typically we would have only advertised the amenities area section as something to be reviewed.
Yeah, and I think to your question, Chris, again, I think if this motion passes on this document, and I'd just like to see us go through the process, and we don't know that exact process till you guys come back to us as we look forward. And, that would be my intention and whatever, and I'm open to hearing what the rest of the council.
We have a motion on the,
Yeah.
And this was discussion.
This
and
is
I
discussion
asked-
on the motion, but.
And I asked two very straightforward questions.
I'll give my opinion on it. I think if in the future, and hopefully we will, because it's been I know it's been behind the scenes work, but when the sign ordinance is reviewed by whatever body, whether it be an appointed committee, which I don't think I agree with, needs to have another committee, that if they come up with something out of that we so pass to the sign ordinance, then we come back to these types of documents and refine it from there going forward. I don't think it's something, I think I understand your point, but I think it gets a bit haphazard if, okay, we're going to look at it now and then, piecemeal it together. I'd rather see a review as what you recalled of the sign ordinance, the top issues, and then if something gets changed in that, then it fixes all conflicts. But at this point, I
That is
don't
my
want to get
point.
into it.
I think that you just captured what I was suggesting. This language, if it's modified this evening, can be reviewed by whatever entity reviews it at the next time that the sign ordinance is reviewed. And that could include this
Exactly.
language that has been incorporated. Guys, it's pretty straightforward. It's not rocket science. I'm just suggesting that tonight, we're adding language that the Planning Commission hasn't seen as part of their review. And I think that out of due respect for that entity, that at least for this council member, I want to make it clear that I didn't intend for this language to proceed without their review. Whether that happens as a part of the section that they're going to be reviewing, I think we owe it to those entities that we say we value their input to give them an opportunity. So if that opportunity comes with the review of the sign ordinance, so be it.
Okay, but I think your question, Chris, was more.
Because that's not what was asked.
Yeah, I think
What was asked was whether or not, when I took back the section that was reserved to the Planning Commission, if they would also look at this language in I. What was just said was the Planning Commission needs to either look at this or they need to look at it more comprehensively when they evaluate the sign ordinance in total.
The reason that
and I guess that's where I'm having a disconnect, because the first request was I need to know from the council how they want that to proceed, because it's going to cause us just to track differently. That's it. I don't care which one, and I'm happy to have them review it. Really am. I need to know what
This council member's opinion on it is, if this motion passes, that when we go through the process in due time, that the planning commission will look at this one particular item as well as the entire, if there are any modifications to sign orders. But it's not requiring you to immediately go to the planning commission with, looking at this one item.
I agree. I think it ought to be looked at when they look at specifics with the sign ordinance and not part of this other outdoor amenity stuff.
Okay, all right, so you know what, we got a motion and a second. I'm asking we vote on that now. And, questions can be either after that or next meeting when we discuss the process of going forward. So,
Can I just
anything
get a
you
really,
feel like?
Mayor, if I could just get a really simple answer, and I think it is that, yes, they'll have an opportunity to review this language as a part of the review of whatever modifications come out of staff with regards to the signed ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, will the city clerk please call the next item?
Next item is RZ 11-04 to amend Chapter 64, Article 8, Divisions 1 and 2, off-street parking and loading. Agenda item number 11071. First presentation at April 11th council meeting, discussed at April 18th work session. Ms. Lynn Tully.
Hey, can I break in one? I just want to make sure, point of order on this last discussion. I'm not sure if I actually formally closed the hearing. We didn't have any comments, I don't believe, so I just want to make sure we're okay there. Okay, moving forward. Go ahead, Lynn.
All righty. Again, as was presented to you last week during the work session, this is an update to our parking standards. It updates a few new use categories, including carry-out-only restaurants, data centers, and libraries. It also includes a reduction in retail and commercial office use requirements for parking. Further, it includes a reduction of the basic parking requirement for those areas or for those developments that are within walking distance from the development to a bus stop. One of the, if you'll note, the new version that's, again, sitting on your desk, starts with calculations, section 64-1410. There were really only very minor changes. One was a spelling change in here. The other is clarification. On page 1, in that first paragraph, clarified by adding the highlighted section which reads, "For the purposes of assembly seating calculations, a bench seat shall be calculated at a width of 18 inches." So that clarifies that one, which kind of took us all by surprise there last week. Other than that, the changes are as submitted at the work session and as shown in the first reading. Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Julie?
As it relates to the library, I think the question that I posed last time was just the opportunity to speak with the library board. Do you have any updates on that?
I don't have any updates on that. I couldn't speak with the library board, and I looked to try to find what their requirements were. Their requirements very well may be more than our minimum, but I think that's probably okay.
Right.
They can put in more, they just can't put in less than 3.
Thank you.
Per thousand.
Any other questions, Alan?
I just have a request. For the purposes of helping the council be able to articulate good motions, can staff provide a draft date or something in its drafts? Because these drafts, if I'm going to provide a motion, they're dated exactly the same, and that's confusing.
Yes, sir, we can do that. That was an error on my part.
We've had that issue before, where we've had multiple versions. Hopefully we can just put a draft at the top or something, draft date.
We'll do that, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion if nobody has any further comments.
I'll accept a motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve RZ 1104 to amend Chapter 64. Article 8, is that right? 8, Divisions 1 and 2, off-street parking and loading, and with the draft that you gave us tonight.
I'll second the
It has
motion.
the yellow highlighted where we clarified the bench seat.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this?
No, sir, we do not.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing now. I've got a motion and a second by Councilmember Hewitt and a second by Councilmember Bailey. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was easier. Yeah, no. Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Don't blink, hold on.
Yeah. Can you go get some more water real quick? Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Our final zoning Agenda item is RC 11-05 to amend Chapter 64, Article 17, Section 64-2453, creation of a Historic Preservation Commission. Agenda item number 11-072, first presentation at April 11th and discussed at April 18th work session, presented by Ms. Lynn Tully.
Again, as presented at the work session, this simply proposes to change the terms of the Historic Preservation Commission to be consistent with all other bodies that are appointed by the council. And so it changes those terms to run concurrently with the appointing council member, such that when your term expires, their term expires also. It changes those terms also to 4 years, which is, again, consistent with your terms and the terms of other bodies that you have appointed. Are there any questions?
Okay. If not, I have a motion and a second.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 11-085.
Motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember Hewitt. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All of that unanimous. All right, we'll move on to new business. City Clerk, please.
Approval of a resolution.
The second one, sorry.
Amending resolution numbers 10-12-165, 10-09-155, and 10-08-68, appointing members of the Historic Preservation Commission for the City of Milton pursuant to ordinance number 10-06-65, Chapter 64, Article 17, Section 64-2453. This is agenda item number 11-085. Ms. Lynn Tully.
Again, this resolution simply clears up the terms of the currently appointed Historic Preservation Commission members to coincide with the appointing council member's term. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Lynn? Well, okay. Do I have a motion and a second? So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second by Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Move on to reports. Anything else? I want to.
We have one more.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. That's why I said, is there anything else? Please call the next item.
Ratification of a purchase and sale agreement between the City of Milton, Georgia and Branch Banking and Trust Company for the purchase of property at 15690 Hopewell Road, Milton, Georgia, 3004. Agenda item number 11-086. Mr. Chris Lagerblum.
Mayor Council, this is all stuff that you're aware of. I just need your formal ratification during the meeting to ratify this document, which is in conformance with the authority that you gave me to go out and acquire land at 15690 Hopewell Road.
Mayor, I have a motion.
And it is
Anybody
for
have
all
questions?
3 parcels, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve agenda item number 11-086, ratification of a purchase and sale agreement between the City of Milton, Georgia and Branch Banking and Trust Company for the purchase of property at 15690 Hopewell Road, Milton, Georgia, 30004.
Second motion.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Love. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to reports. One thing I want to report on, and I hope everyone had a good Easter weekend, and just a little personal story. My wife still likes to, even though my kids are grown, except for my youngest, she likes to do their Easter basket and hide little eggs, early in the morning so they can find them. And
Well, the Easter Bunny
my
exists.
Easter Bunny comes to our house, and of course my 16-year-old, we get him up at 5:30 to go sunrise service. He's not in a good mood anyways, and he's rolling his eyes. So anyway, so he plays along with it, and of course Mom's like, all right, and she always has some bigger eggs with her surprise eggs with treats in them, and so she's all excited to have them with their basket come down. All right, kids, do you want to open up your eggs and see what surprises you get? Well, imagine to her surprise, we had also gotten baby chickens recently, and So he had gone and just dumped all his eggs and put little baby chicks in. So she's sitting there, and she's like, "Open your eggs, Evans." He goes, the chicken jumps out. I just thought it was funny. So, anyway.
That is pretty funny.
And the other thing, could I ask staff that as I look around during these meetings, especially as they go on, I seem to be the only one eating the candy. And can y'all just maybe not put the candy here or put it like way away? So. If we need candy, maybe put it in the other room, then we can have to get it from you. And, all right, does anybody in council want to say anything?
No, I would like documents where we've had so many changes, if we could get a clean copy just to look at that isn't redlined and blue-lined and marked through, highlighted, because I think there's several places like we missed into, closing parentheses and things like that that really, they really don't matter, but yet we do want them to be right. So if we could just get a clean document online, we don't need more paper to look at, that would be great.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay.
I have a quick question
Alan?
for Chris. Chris, where are we with the tablet PC type things?
I'm waiting on just some feedback from Karen. As soon as I get positive feedback, I'll move forward.
Karen, will you give him some positive feedback so we can move forward?
Yeah. It definitely has its limitations, I'll be honest with you. It's not as easy as I would have thought, but it is better than all the paper, so. I'm still
That was
having.
positive enough.
Yeah, I'm still. Personally, I'll be honest with you, I've used the iPad, and to me, the iPad was much easier to use than this, but I know you don't like iPad, so I know that's not an option, so.
No, it is an option. I'll get one in if y'all, I mean, it is an option for y'all. I won't have one, but it's an option. If you like me to get one of those for,
Could
to
Karen,
try.
could you test that and compare them?
I'll let you compare
Just
them.
some-
And it may be that I'm just so used to the iPhone, and when I've used an iPad, to me, it was just very similar, but this, I just
If
think.
we're going to spend the money, we get the right device.
I got a question on that too after you finish that. Do we have to use the thing?
No?
I mean, I'm from the old school, and I like paper, and I'll print it myself. I don't care about, to save the city money, but I don't want that stuff.
If we got an iPad, would it be on the Verizon network or would it be on? Okay. So I remember I used to have an Air card and AT&T didn't work in here.
It doesn't, but I'm not sure how well Verizon's working in here right
Right
now.
now.
Y'all look at your phones. Are they dead?
No, mine's
For the most
working.
part,
But
yeah.
My
Had a little-
My
Verizon
AT&T
phone
does
works.
work.
we
It
had-
is working?
We had
Yeah.
a little lightning strike.
My
Yeah,
Verizon
your
phone
house.
works.
Great, that's what I
taken
need.
out.
Took
Like
the
I haven't
tower
had
out.
enough. Like I haven't had enough.
No, it's not your house. Near Birmingham.
No, it's not your house. It's the tower.
tower got
at the
hit by
Birmingham
lightning.
corners.
I'm telling I've had enough in my household over the last 3 weeks.
not
so
in your
I
house.
It's
know.
not your house.
But I did find out how to get the weather bug on here, if y'all want to see where the rain is.
It's right out the window.
So, what was
All right, staff
Let me
reports.
update you on just a couple of things.
It says it is in Milton, because weather bug does recognize Milton.
And we are going to get out of here because the weather that's coming through is not great. So y'all don't dally getting out of here tonight. I will be out of town starting Saturday and be gone until the following Saturday. So you all have a meeting a week from tonight. It is the Lynn Tully Show, a little bit lighter than tonight's Lynn Tully Show. But it's going to be a fairly short meeting for y'all on Monday next week. We do need to have it because we have several items that will follow back up on the following zoning agenda. We are like on week, Sudie, about 5 in a row that we've had meetings. So
7 in a row.
7 in a row by the time we get done. So recognize that tonight was a pretty heavy meeting, and we did that in exchange for a pretty light meeting next Monday. You all will be considering a zoning, the first items in first presentation, a zoning case, and we are presenting to you a request and a possible moratorium on pain pill mill type clinics. So.
And
so
you
you'll
know
get
I
a
will not be here either, so.
full story about that next Monday. So get your pills quick.
Okay, just
No,
so you
we
guys,
don't go pills rather than candy, no.
in case anybody's wondering, people ever use the Granicus or whatever, just got an email to get the iPad. So people are listening.
This is a big week for the strategic plan and the public parallel process, the public outreach component of the strategic plan. We've met with representatives of the Equestrian Committee, along with Councilmember Lusk showed up to that meeting. We have a meeting for HOA presidents have been invited on Wednesday at Crooked Creek, the clubhouse there, 7 o'clock. We have a meeting here in this building for any citizen that might want to come, or anybody who couldn't get to the HOA meeting, 7 o'clock Thursday. Next week, we are scheduling a meeting that is specifically catered to the board and committee members of the city of Milton. I believe that's going to be scheduled Tuesday. We had to try to find a date that we could actually fit it in that they weren't meeting otherwise. So a lot of those are going on this week. You know, we've kind of tried to focus them towards specific stakeholder groups, but honestly, we're interested in input. So we're not interested in having somebody show up and say, "Gosh, you can't stay here tonight because you don't fit the crowd that we invited." These are really just meetings that we hope to get input at that will be strongly facilitated, well run. And you all are welcome at any or all of them as you might find yourself to be important to be there. All the while knowing that before this plan goes forward, it's got to come back to you for approval. So ultimately, you will hold the trump card. So you're welcome to join us if you want. You certainly don't have to.
Will we actually have a work session where we sit down with y'all rather than, I hate for you to bring a completed document to us and then us say, oh, no, that's not.
Oh, we're not there.
Okay. But before we actually have a session where we can have some conversations and feedback prior to, and that was one thing that bothered me about the crabapple thing is I felt like a finished document was what was presented to us, and we really never had the time to go back and forth with conversations before the document was completed. And I just want to make sure we don't do that with the strategic plan.
We're not in that position. We're trying our best to get it to a point, though, that when we do bring it to you, it is ripe for discussion. So I think we're going to hit that balance. I think we're going to strike that balance at the May work session.
So it'll be a true draft that welcomes I like the term conversation as opposed to we're just approving something.
Right.
So that it's not perceived that suddenly we're holding something up because it was the first time that we had an opportunity to provide input. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Just in terms of all those meetings that you just listed, and I'm sure it's on the website.
It is.
That just has that. So when folks say, is it on the homepage currently?
Go over to the calendar and it shows us upcoming items and the little stars. If you hover over them, it shows what they are.
Just a suggestion, because sometimes people don't go and hover over the stars, but because it is important and because to your point, there's a lot of transparency that's trying to be provided. If you could just, and Jason's may not be here, but if you could just maybe highlight that versus having to go and plunge into the calendar and just pull that out and say strategic visioning meetings and maybe
It has
Jason.
been.
Okay.
Yep, it sure has been.
But on that website, maybe there's just a place that just lists them so people don't have to look so hard.
Gotcha. Jason's not here. He ran into a dentist that took out 4 wisdom teeth last week.
Well,
and
I hope you're feeling well, Jason.
He wasn't looking too good this
That's-
morning, so we said, Jason, go ahead, head on.
But whether that's Jason or if we can just put something out there that makes it easy for
Poor
people to
guy.
see.
Good. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I know we're here late. Seriously, get home with this weather.
Well, what is the?
Oh, it's going to be bad weather?
Driving around
Yes.
to our text and our police officer saying, "Oh, you should see that lightning bolt." So,
We had hail already.
I was serious when I said
Yeah.
the cell tower in Birmingham was struck. That was why our cell phones are dead. So apparently, it was quite interesting to see.
Wow.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Let me say that.
Unanimous.